And one day a gentleman walks in and he was Romanian and he saw our last name, Voivod, and he fell to his knees and started bowing. He says, "You are queen of the gypsies." And she said, "Sir, please," and it took her a while to get him off the ground. And they had to do a business transaction. She was a president. She was approving a loan for his business. So finally they're done. And as he's going out, he's bowing down to her again. Right. So she came to dinner that night and we thought it was really funny. We're like, "That's so crazy." Right.
Sure, right.
So fast forward to the book, Vlad Tepes, who Bram Stoker wrote Dracula about, was a 3-time voivod. And it means war leader, leader of the dragon, and all these things. And it's just so crazy that the one girl that opens up a vampire shop in New Orleans, the time it was the only vampire shop in the country, would have the last name Voivod.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Writers Drinking Whiskey, your literary happy hour, the show that drinks 1, 2, 3, 4 tumblers of whiskey every episode. I am your host, William R. Hensey, and today I am really delighted and honored to have author Marita Woywod-Crandle. It was the V part. Did I get it correct?
Very close, yes. Voivod.
Voivod. Okay. That's what it was. Oh, it was the D at the end that got me. The D turns into a T. See, and we just talked about this pregame. I knew I was going to mess it up though. I'm like, no matter how hard I try, I'm just going to have to do it. And then once I've said it a few times, it'll stick. But let me give you the I like to say the tasting notes introduction here because I'm very theme oriented. I could say cliff notes like a normal person, but that wouldn't be any fun. So you're a nonfiction and historical fiction writer. You have books I had here was New Orleans Vampires, History and Legend, Josie Arlington, Storyville, The Life and Times of a New Orleans Madam. You had Mosquito, and I think that was the ones I had written down here. And you also own several vampire-themed businesses in New Orleans, the French Quarter there. So you had the Boutique du Vampire, and 2 restaurants, the New Orleans Vampire Cafe and the Vampire Apothecary. Anything you'd like to add to that? Anything I might have missed?
I have one more book, Johnny White's Sports Bar, the tiny joint that never closed until it did. It was a bar where I worked for 11 years on Bourbon Street. And we were the one that was open during Katrina. It became very important. In fact, I'm going to be featured on CNN at the Katrina anniversary, which is coming up on the 29th of August. So, and it's a fun book. It's about French Quarter lifestyle and how this bar was like the locals' living room. It was amazing.
Yeah. Sure. That sounds amazing. Awesome. Very, very cool. Thanks for that. And so that kind of gets me to the first question I like to ask anyway. So, in New Orleans, but so if we are to visit New Orleans, what's the best place to get a drink there?
Well, either the Vampire Apothecary, which we have drinks that change color in front of your eyes. That is a gin-based drink, but we mix it with pea flower, and it's beautiful. It starts off blue, and then we add, the magical elixir, and people love to take videos of it. We have so many fun drinks. We have a lot of great mocktails, too. And then at the Vampire Cafe, we have a whole different drink menu. We have a blackberry mojito, things like that. But up here in the attic, which I'm in the Casket Girl attic now, which is at the very top of the apothecary. And the apothecary, they were pharmacies back in the day. And New Orleans had the very first pharmacy ever. And so I wanted to kind of pay homage to that and offer something that people could learn about. So we have all kinds of apothecary things around. We even have a machine where you can turn vodka into gin. And I like to push that for bachelor parties, something fun guys can do when they're, having a drink. They can make their own drink while they're doing that. But in the attic, we have a whole different set of drinks. And this one that I'm going to make later on, whenever you're ready, is called the Blessed Screw. And it's a really lovely whiskey drink. So we are one of the very cool places to have drinks. I also own a little speakeasy called Potions, but it really is cool. Speakeasy. You have to go to one of my other places to get the password and everything. And we have magical drinks there too. Like the Broken Mirror is an absinthe drink mixed with green chartreuse. We have the Black Cat is a pomegranate margarita, all kinds of fun stuff.
That sounds really fun. I love speakeasies, too. So it's a fun little thing that's kind of popped up again. And it's cool when you have to do something, for it. Because sometimes someone calls it a speakeasy, but it's really just like a bar, Right. It's like with the door that doesn't have the sign, right? And it's like, it's more fun when you have to work for it a little bit.
It's actually my favorite thing when I find people. I used to work there full time with my husband when we first opened it. And when I got those people on the last day of their vacation, and they told me they tried to look for it the entire time they were here, and they were so happy that they finally got up there. And that makes me happy too. It should be kind of a struggle, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, very cool. And so what are we drinking today?
Okay, we are going to have the blessed screw. So this is what we serve it in. And put ice in. Oh, I have to drink this water because otherwise the ice.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, ice. Okay, then we're going to use Von Payne whiskey, which is a black currant infused whiskey. And if you don't know about it, it's super cool. It comes with a gargoyle pewter pourer, and it actually pours out of his mouth. And then this is the label.
Okay, very cool.
You have to expect it that it's blackcurrant. It's a great whiskey, but if you know that it's blackcurrant infused, it makes it that much better because otherwise it's kind of a chalk. It's a different taste.
Sure.
Pour out of his mouth.
Very cool.
4 count. I'm shaking because the bottle's heavy. Okay. That's enough. And then we're going to add a little bit of chocolate liqueur. Hold on, I'll put him up here. And I'm just using our well, but you should use like Godiva or something lovely. And I just add a little squirt. Did you see that? Am I on camera?
Okay. Yeah, you're on camera.
And then just a tiny bit of orange juice. There we go. And then I like to mix it once. And then we are going to smoke it. So I'm going to put this little smoker up here. You can see it?
I can see it. Yeah, that's a really cool, it's like the skull smoker, huh?
We're going to get him all... Oh, I didn't put the wood chips in. I was going to put them in ahead of time, but so this is a little container that we have different flavors. This one's hickory. And I just put a little bit in, maybe 2 pinches. And that'll last for like, I don't know, maybe 4 drinks. Okay, and then smoke that. A nice smoke going.
Oh, very cool. It comes out of the nose there a little there too, huh?
Yeah.
You saw a few puffs. That's really cool.
I'll give it just a second to stop. And let's see. Maybe a little bit longer. Okay, and now we're gonna lift that up, and the smoke comes out of the top too.
Very cool.
And there you have a delicious whiskey drink.
Very cool. I love that. I love that it's a whiskey drink too. That always makes me happy. I always joke that I'm like equal opportunity. Like people can come on, drink whatever they want. The show could have been writers drinking wine, I suppose. Like I just like the alliteration of it. But then the older I get, the more I'm just very like, I just want to drink my whiskey. And my wife was like, you want to try this? And I'm like, nah, I'll just have the whiskey. I'll have an old fashioned or something. But that's really cool.
That it was called Writers Drinking Whiskey. I'm a huge whiskey drinker, and we have many downstairs. I have a lot of the Japanese whiskeys, and I experiment a lot with whiskeys. I love them. So thank you for that.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for that. And actually, I'll mention very briefly because it was actually a viewer recommended. I had never tried the Scotch. I don't know if it's kind of hard to see how the reflection is. Talisker. It's a... Let's see if I can put it closer. I hadn't tried it. And actually, when I went to, it's an Isle of Skye whiskey. When I went to, we have this giant liquor store chain called Total Wine and More. I'm not sure how wide they are. I know they've started to pick up in California, but do you have it? Okay. So I had to go to Total Wine, and there was like a good 4 or 5 there. So I was like, oh. And someone had just mentioned in a comment, they're like, oh, you should try it. I'm like, I've never tried it. So now I'm on a mission to try this whiskey. So I'll just have that in my little wooden cup because I'm a simple man here. So
well, cheers.
Cheers. So awesome. So thank you for that. So I wonder if we could start with were you born and raised in New Orleans, or what brought you there originally when you got there?
So I was born in Germany, and I lived in Germany for a while. Then my parents moved. I was born in Munich, but my dad's from Berlin. My mom's from Dresden. Then they moved to California, and I loved California. And so I went to school there, and I became an executive in California. I was president of marketing for Coldwell Banker, for Home Savings of America, and I mean, many others. But lastly, for a huge conglomeration of companies that market, we have companies overseas, and you probably own like, 15 things this company makes, because they have spinner racks in grocery stores, and they have toys and tools, and we even have luggage and TVs and plush animals and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I was working for them and came to New Orleans on business. And I literally stepped foot in the French Quarter, and I couldn't believe it existed. Because when I was a kid, I used to love Disneyland, and I wanted to escape to Pirates of the Caribbean. That was And so I couldn't believe it. I was so sad every time that I had to leave, that on my one trip here, I got a little tiny apartment. It was less than 300 square feet. It was $500 a month. And I just felt like I would feel more connected to the city. And then on my way back, I did a marketing plan to bring vampire wine to New Orleans, because I was trying to figure out something I could do to live here. And when I got back, I thought I was going to be talking to Romania, which is German is the second language in Romania. And I thought, well, I'll be doing fine, because we used to import the wine from Romania. Vampire Wine did. And so he agreed. And so we started working together. And then I moved here Halloween weekend to promote the wine at the Endless Night Vampire Ball. And I sold my house over the phone. I met my husband the first week I moved here. And he came to California with me and got my cars and my dogs. And I've been here ever since. So.
Very cool. That's a neat. Where were you in California?
Santa Monica, Malibu, Lake Arrowhead, Dana Point, Burbank.
Oh, wow. You've been all over then.
All over. And my parents lived in Calamasa, which is it's on a high plateau. It's right by Big Bear Mountains, like at the bottom of the mountains, and like the Arrowhead. But then it's about a half hour from Palm Springs and about an hour, these days, probably about 2 hours from Los Angeles. So it's very centrally located. It was a good place to, live.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a lovely area too, like Arrowhead and, Big Bear and all that. It's, Big Bear can sometimes feel a little like Los Angeles in the mountains if you're there during like busy time. But when you're there, not like the, ski weekend or something, it feels like you're in a different world, it's like it's nice and quiet and, mountains and everything. So that's awesome. So was it always, so you were working for Vampire Wine, like, so when does I
wasn't really working for them. I wasn't really working for them. I was working with them and like promoting the wine. And I was starting a music business. And then I also wanted to open up a jazz or blues club. And that's what I was really working on. I immediately opened a music business, and I did a CD called Blues Off Bourbon. And we had, I had 6 bands that played down Bourbon Street, and each band gave me 2 original songs. And then I put on a CD with a map on the back so people could find them. And I was real nervous. I went to House of Blues with this proposal to, bring awareness to all the great musicians that we have on Bourbon Street. And the guy's like, okay, when can you do it? So I emceed the blues. It was called Blues Off Bourbon, and NPR radio picked it up. I mean, it happened so good, so fast. But then I started getting let down by musicians. I interviewed with NPR, and one of the musicians showed up and said, they walked into the room saying they did a lot of coke that day, and not sure they can do the interview. And I'm like, whoa. And so I think it's something to really think about for musicians, because I ran into a lot of that. I booked somebody at Jazz Fest, they didn't show up. It's a very difficult business for people that have very addictive personalities. And yes, drugs and drinking and the music industry do go together hand in hand, and it's kind of a shame. This is Renfield. It's my little monster. I rescue dogs, and he's my latest. I got him on Friday. He's going to his new home tomorrow. So
okay.
Put him down again.
That's okay.
Anyway,
he wants to be part of the show. Yeah.
And then it was sad. So then I thought, well, what else can I do? And then I thought, well, the vampire thing is so big here, and really it was Anne Rice who brought it here to really brought awareness to vampires in New Orleans. And there was a vampire tour, but there was nothing to do afterwards. So I opened up Boutique de Vampire 22 years ago. And it's crazy too. I have Boutique de Vampire, the Vampire Cafe, and Potions Lounge, my speakeasy. I all opened on New Year's Eve. and all coincidentally. It just worked out. That's when I got the lease and I got everything and, was able to open. Well, when we opened up the apothecary, it wasn't working out. So I had to open up on April 1st. And my chef, about 6 months after we opened, said, "You're not going to believe this." And he showed me an article that in, I think it was 1580, New Year's Eve was on April 1st. And it switched to January 1st. And the people that still followed the old calendar were called April Fools. And that's how the whole thing started. So we ended up opening on New Year's Eve anyway. So that was kind of cool.
That's really funny. And thank you for that. So I always like to kind of ask, like, what's your author journey? Like, where does the writing kind of come in? And so maybe you can weave that in. So now we know your kind of corporate career and how you've gotten to New Orleans and the businesses. Where does the writing kind of weave into that?
So, I mean, you probably know this, writers write. And I've always written. And I actually thought it was pretty funny when, now I can't think of her name, K.J. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter.
J.K. Rowling, yeah.
Okay. It was this big thing that she wrote some of it on a cocktail napkin. And I'm like, wow, kindred, I'm sure that you have written things on cocktail napkins, right? But that was this big thing, like, that people were talking about. I'm like, okay. Anyway, I've written my entire life. And I love Harry Potter, by the way. But anyway, I had mostly magazine articles. I was in Health and Fitness Journal. I had a thing called Workout Watcher where I interviewed very unusual workouts all across Los Angeles. And one of them was like horse riding in Malibu, salsa dancing, fitness adventure training, which was terrifying. So I was in excellent shape when I did this. But I did this 6-week course of adventure fitness training, and I found that it's like the ultimate race. Like it's not about getting in shape. It's about you better be in good shape. And if you get hurt, you have to finish. So if you break something, your fellow team members are going to carry you. And we ran with boulders in Malibu. And it was so bittersweet because we found out that we were going to be a National Geographic magazine for this whole, it was a 6-week course. And I was like, wow, how cool. Well, it was that time we were hiking in Malibu and we had these big boulders and it was really, really hot. And we had 1 minute to go into this like waterfall that was freezing cold. And they really could have killed us when I think back on how hot and cold that was. Anyway, I went in there and it was so cold, but I was bright red. I run red anyway. I'm a very red person. But anyway, I put the water on my face. And when I was doing that is when they took the picture, right? And it wasn't just me, but it was like maybe 5 other people. So It comes out and I was all excited. And my brother that day, he came home and he's like, "Hey, Marita, did you know that earthworms have the same DNA as human beings, 99% the same?" I said, "No, I don't believe that." He goes, "No, I wouldn't have believed it either until I saw that picture of you in National Geographic magazine." So it was that bad. Like my grandmother couldn't even say anything good about it, So it was kind of a bummer. But anyway, I've always written, and I didn't write that, but I've had those that Health and Fitness Journal magazine article, and then I started writing a novel, The Carter Brothers, which is going to come out next year, 2026. And all of a sudden, all this stuff came towards me. History Press contacted me to see if I would write a proposal for a book that was historically accurate on where the vampire legends of the French Quarter originated. And I said, "God, that's crazy. I'm writing a novel about one of them right now. So I'd be stupid to say no, right?" So I wrote the proposal. Luckily, they accepted it. And last month, my book on Amazon, the second time now, was number 3 of all supernatural books. And that's the New Orleans Vampire History and Legend. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. So they use it for all the tour guides here. And they also, the TV show, The Originals, the writers came to meet with me before they started the show. And they used a lot of my information for their historical background. So that was kind of
very cool. That was really neat. Yeah.
And then, then I just started, writing and opening, unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, but I started opening restaurants. And I didn't mean to, it just kind of happened. And so my writing got put on the side for the novel, The Carter Brothers, again. And every time I thought, okay, I'm going to dive in. But I love writing historical fiction. So I wrote the Josie Arlington book in preparation for this novel as well. So I wrote the New Orleans Vampires and the Josie Arlington book because I wanted Wayne Carter to have a love interest that was a madam. And I fell in love with Josie. She has such a great story. And so, and the book actually became very important. It's a long story, but we're going to hopefully put Josie back in her tomb one day. And it would be because of me and because of that book. And so it's pretty important. Anyway, so I can't not write. And Mosquito, I couldn't focus on the Carter Brothers because it's very intense writing. I have to really focus and, what I'm working on. But Mosquito, I can write, and I wrote all of it in my restaurant, being distracted. Hey, Marita, okay, and another sentence, and now the sequel,
Sure.
I mean, it was crazy. But the sequel comes out in this October, Mosquito 2, and I wrote that pretty much the same way, mostly here at the restaurants.
Right. Yeah. Right. Very cool. Yeah. Thank you for that. I love hearing that because writing rules, writing advice kind of tend to drive me crazy. Just in the general premise of them. But the one that drives me the most crazy that you hear people talk about all the time is that you have to write every day at the same exact time. And it's just like, you would just, most people would never be able to write anything. The select few that could actually do that. It's like, no, most people do what you were doing. I used to commute for years, and I used to say I did a lot of my writing commuting. Not that I was actively writing, but a lot of those ideas, like you're talking about with the cocktail napkins, I used to have tiny little journals, and I'd write them on there. And
just write on everything.
And it's just, you just try to write it so you can kind of be writing. You can be, the ideation process, all of that, even the words. You find a way. If you're a writer, you make it happen.
I don't know if you ever do this, but this drives me crazy when I do it. I'll be, in bed, and I'll have an idea, and I'll start thinking about it. And then I'll start writing the sentences. And I'm like, okay, Marita, that's stupid. You're writing this for nothing because you're not going to remember any of this, right? So then, because I will not remember, and I think it's something I really want to keep, I get my phone out and I'll put it in my notes section, and then I'm wide awake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I always write when you're like about to fall asleep, like really comfortable. Then it's like, oh, do. And it's like, okay, well, now I'm awake, writing this, because the few times I've thought, I'll remember this in the morning, and like you never do. And then you're chasing those, phantom words forever. If you're watching Writers Drinking Whiskey, you believe in the arts and in the freedom of artists to pursue with their stories. This show is about learning the stories of writers far and wide, and now I'd like to tell you about one of mine. Pirates of Appalachia, my epic absurdist satire, is now going to be releasing weekly as a serial on Substack. Set after a series of events colloquially referred to in the story as the Trumpocalypse, nations have given way to mega city-states, and they're separated by these unincorporated wilds where all manner of mayhem, mystery, and chaos ensues. And in the grandest city-state of them all, Pittsburgh, a highly contested election season features a sociopathic esports star versus a hulking ex-clergyman to decide who will get to spend the city's debt and be the next goober. If you took one of those How Would Our Baby Look softwares, plugged in Huckleberry Finn and Slaughterhouse 5, and that child grew up to be as fightingly, city-sackingly mad as a boy named Sue, you would have an image of Pirates of Appalachia. Pirates will be free and in its entirety on Substack. So go on there and subscribe to me. You'll get Pirates for free. I will also send you out an ebook that will be for free and for paid subscribers. If you'd like to support the show, $5 a month, you'll also get a free copy of the audiobook of Without Expiration, my American Fiction Award winner, done by a really talented narrator, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And if you're not inclined to check out Substack, don't blame you. Completely okay. You can continue to support the show here on YouTube. You can become a member if you like. You can also just continue watching. We will run you a tab because this is Cheers, and we see all of you out there watching as Norm. And we will let that tab run, and we will yell out your name every time you're here and be really enthusiastic about it as we go. Now let's get back to the show. So I do want to get to, though, before we get too far into this, because we had talked pregame about your name and why that's important. So maybe we can take a detour over really quick to why you want to make sure we use your main name and everything.
Okay. So when I moved here, I went up to the vampire shop first. The first year I lived here. And about a year after that, my father sent me a book by Elizabeth Kostova. It's called The Historian. And it is such a beautiful book to read in any genre. It's such a beautiful book. It's like reading a painting. Her writing is gorgeous. Anyway, I didn't read it while he was still alive because I was, busy and I was working on my own books. And then he passed away, unfortunately, because my father, if I asked him for something, we would have done great research together. And it makes me very sad that I didn't do that. But anyway, So I read the book, and I couldn't, because he told me, you've got to read this, you won't believe it. And so then I got to go back to when I was about 14. My cousin followed us to America from Germany, and her name was Vera, and she became a president of Crocker Bank. And one day a gentleman walks in, and he was Romanian, and he saw our last name, Woywod, and he fell to his knees and started bowing. He says, "You are queen of the gypsies." And she said, "Sir, please," and it took her a while to get him off the ground. And they had to do a business transaction. She was a president. She was approving a loan for his business. So finally they're done. And as he's going out, he's bowing down to her again. Right. So she came to dinner that night, and we thought it was really funny. We're like, that's so crazy. Right.
Sure, right.
So fast forward to the book, Vlad Tepes, who Bram Stoker wrote Dracula about, was a 3-time Woywod. And it means war leader, leader of the dragon, and all these things. And it's just so crazy that the one girl that opens up a vampire shop in New Orleans, at the time it was the only vampire shop in the country, would have the last name Woywod. And that's why I hated the name, because it was so hard for people to pronounce, and they were like Woywod, and it sounds so awful, and I couldn't wait to get married. So, but then, and then I got married to a Greek gentleman. His name was Moskos, and then we got divorced. And when I would say my name, everybody would say, "Oh, you're Greek." And so I'm like, okay, I got to change my name back, but I don't want to change it back. So I had a contest with a bunch of people at dinner one night, and my cousin was here, and Jaeger won. We went through them all. So I was reading Jaeger for a long time. But then when I married,
were you drinking Jaeger that night too, or was it? Where did Jaeger come from?
Jaeger. I still like Jaeger. I like German Jaeger. It's very different in America. But anyway, so when I got married, I changed it to, I added the Woywod back in, because I think stupid not to, because I'm ingrained in the vampire culture now. Yeah.
Right. That is really neat. And it's those synchronicities and things can be so crazy, right? I mean, and it's like you just don't know, and suddenly it pops up. Like I had on a gentleman named Joshua Cutchin. It hasn't aired yet. Actually, as we record this in August, it's actually next week is when his goes on. But he was like, he's written a lot of books. One was called Fourth Wall Phantoms, and it's about, those things we imagine suddenly popping up. And I just started reading it, but he's talking about Gumby, and it's like Gumby pops up all these weird times. And in my little city, where I saw it in Glendora, so right off the 210, like due east of Pasadena, 10 miles, 15 miles, right along the foothills here. And it happens to be where Gumby was created. So I'm reading this, and I'm like, Gumby, and I'm like, it's one of our little, I always say we're Mayberry, as far as close to Mayberry as you can get in kind of the sprawl of LA. That's us. And I'm like, one of our claims to fame is Gumby was created here. We had a Gumby festival at one point, and I'm reading this, it's like Gumby, and I'm like, it's weird how those things kind of play out.
There's got to be a reason for that. I thought it was cool that Tarzana was named Tarzan was named after Tarzana, right? Or was it the other way around?
I think so. No, I think you got it right. I think that he named it after the writer named it after Tarzana, if I remember right. I'll try when we if I remember. I'll try to look it up when we before I record this, and I'll put it at the bottom of the screen for anyone watching. Or if you're on the podcast version, I'm sorry guys, because I guess I could splice in some audio maybe, but correction. The city of Tarzana is actually named after Tarzan. The writer of Tarzan, Edgar Rice Burroughs, started a ranch in Tarzana called Tarzana Ranch. The neighborhood built up around it, and then they named that city Tarzana. That's really neat how that worked out. So was it always? So I know you. So you end up in New Orleans, and Anne Rice has the Interview with the Vampire, the whole series. That's kind of really, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that really kind of reintroduced vampires. Like I feel like we had Dracula and stuff, and it seemed like maybe there's like Lost Boys or something like in the 80s, like maybe there's a little, but it seemed like the interest in vampires had waned a little bit, culturally. And then Anne Rice popped off with Interview with a Vampire, then had the movie with Tom Cruise and everything. It seems like it went full throttle again. Was it just kind of going to New Orleans and like with the books getting popular that got you interested, or was there more of a longer interest with vampire legends and stuff?
I always liked vampires. It was my go-to for Halloween. I love
Uh-huh.
vampire movies. I was drawn to vampire wine, drinking it immediately. Um,
Uh-huh.
I was writing a different vampire novel when I was living in California. It took place in Malibu, which I finished here and I sold it online when I first moved here. Um, but yeah, so I've always liked vampires, but now they've kind of like found me. It's like they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here because we have more stuff for you." Like when I
Sure.
it's crazy. When I opened up my little vampire shop, I had a website, and everybody said I had to have a MySpace. I'm like, why? I have a website, and so they kept bugging me, my friends. So I finally
Right.
did a MySpace, and then all of a sudden, I was so proud to show it to them. And they go, "Oh no, you need Facebook." I'm like, "Oh my
Uh-huh.
God, you guys are killing me," And so I
Right.
started Facebook, and Anne Rice was second in line to be my friend. And she said, "I think we have a mutual friend." And we do, or did. His name's Nick Mannix. He's still alive. But I didn't know that. And we're friends ever since. So that was kind of
Uh-huh.
cool. She
Yeah.
sought me out, and I kind of feel like
Right.
that's what's happening. I don't even do it. It's almost like I have to put things out of my mind because they make themselves happen. Like the
Sure.
apothecary. And it's just crazy how I'm not even doing it. It's just doing it on its own. Like really
Uh-huh.
crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I heard someone say that one time about it's like the idea of like you go in your house, like I had this bar behind me, right? Everything in here consciously got put in here at some point, right? The walls, there was a design, there was a builder for the walls, like all the crazy stuff on the bar. I've over time have done it. And so we recognize that imagination has this real world creation power, but then we kind of go, oh no, but that doesn't apply to the world, or it doesn't apply to this, or it doesn't, you can't literally, manifest things. But then you talk with people all the time. I have all these writers on here, things, and you'll see all the times where it's like, yeah, when you think it, suddenly it's like you're opening this door and things start flooding too. Or you'll hear like psychics or something saying that, like, oh, once they realized it, suddenly they're getting all these voices or something. And it's like you open yourself up to that energy, and that energy is like, yay, I have
That's
a
what
thousand things I want you to do.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in manifesting. In fact, when I lived in Los Angeles, it was really strange because every like building that I thought was beautiful, and I can't remember the names of them now. They had names, but I would be like, "Wow, that's a really cool building," in Brentwood, and I always ended up working in that building. It was crazy.
Really?
Like all these, I worked for Coldwell Banker and Home Savings of America. Whenever I saw a building, I'm like, I'd like to work there. And then sure enough,
Uh-huh.
I end up working in there, and that's just really
Right.
strange. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But,
Sure,
yeah.
sure, for sure. Was there something you before, and I want to hit the books here, but I wanted to still kind of stick just on you, specifically for a minute. Is there anything with, the vampire legends that it's just the vampire lore and things, right? Because there's like there's other things, right? There's werewolves, so there's Mothman. I have a Mothman hanging out above me. I'm a West Virginia born kid, so. But is there anything about the vampire legends, like just vampires, like in general, like the there's all the things, right? There's the blood sucking and the being able to change into different creatures, things like that. Is there any like kind of the archetypical kind of things that speak to you more than others, or?
Well, I think vampires are, which is weird because if you really think about it, it's a horrific thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
there's a creature
Mm-hmm.
that masks as a human, kills humans, has to live on blood. But for some reason, there's this really, romantic, erotic, um,
Mm-hmm.
like craziness about vampires. And it is as if they choose you. I mean, they could choose anybody, but they want you to be with them forever. And I think that's part of it. But what I like about it too is that there's nothing in stone, so you can really make the legend whatever you want to. You can shape your
Sure.
world of vampires, and same with werewolves, really, kind of too. And I do have a werewolf novel coming out, so I'm not just
Okay.
vampire. In fact, my next projects, so I do have another vampire novel coming out. Then I have The Mystic of Scaries, which is about a werewolf, and not a werewolf, but werewolves in Ireland, Scaries, Ireland. And
Uh-huh.
then I have a thriller called Eavesdrop that's about a court stenographer who gets involved in the case and gets in all kinds of trouble because she gets involved in the case. Um, I have a list, and so it's not all vampires, but I mean, I
Sure.
do. I really like to write about vampires, and I don't know if I'll be done. People are asking for a third book for Mosquito, and I thought there were only going to be two, but I could easily write a third book. I just don't want to do that now. I have to
Sure.
complete Carter Brothers, which I've started like, God, I don't even know how, 10 years ago, and so
Sure.
that's for sure. But yeah, no, I don't
Yeah.
think it's not just vampires. It's, I've written so many things, just short stories. I have one on my website. If you go to MaritaWoywod-Crandle.com, you go to the short stories. It's called Toy Story, and it's a true story. When I was doing research on Josie Arlington, the gentleman who was working at Tulane got it. He really liked what I was working on. He asked me if I'd like to see something. I'm like, sure. So he took me to this like storage space in the back, and it reminded me of like in Indiana Jones, the archives where they, the very end of the movie. Oh my God, it was like heaven in there, like crates and rolled up scrolls of things. And then all just like kind of around the building, there were these beautiful tiny tombs, like little models of tombs that were actually tombs that are still there. They were built in the 1800s, early 1900s. But they were what the architects would present to the families so that they could say, yes, that's exactly how I want it. So they're just like in this place. They should be in a museum. And he said they're working on it. But in that space was like the brothel from Lulu White's. And it was a guy named William Toy who did it. And I heard his story and I couldn't believe it was true. And so I wrote a short story about it. So if you're, you can read that, it's on my website. Yeah.
Oh,
so I like
cool. I'll check it out.
Things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I can. I can feel your pain to a degree, like completely with I've been meaning to write this story for 10 years and other things kind of keep popping on. That was the novel that I'm serializing right now, Pirates of Appalachia. I'm serializing it on Substack, and at some point we'll have an actual physical book and ebook and all the rest. But I always say it took me, I think it was more than 15 years, but I think I usually just say 15 years. But it's like I wrote other things in between there. I was working full time. I worked for medical device companies, forever. I was a director of quality and regulatory and all that. I had kids. So we have 4 kids. We have 2 going on 3 grandkids and things. So, but it was like I was like, oh, I finally got to it. So this past year that I'd been kind of writing, podcasting full time, was like, okay, I just have to finish that book. Like I kept like writing, then something else comes up, writing something. I'm like, okay, I just whatever. I just feel like I need to finish this book before I die. Like it just needs to happen. So I understand how you feel. Like no, I've been working on this. It's been put off too long. The muses are angry with me. I need to get over and do it. Have you ever? Oh, go ahead.
I don't know how you feel, but I was thinking about this in preparation for the podcast, just about interesting things. And I've noticed, like when I was working on Mosquito 2, that my character goes to a church and he does confession. And I've never been to confession, ever. So I started to sit down and write it. And I'm like, I can't write this. And so it was kind of fun. I got my friend to come with me because I didn't want to go by myself for some reason. I just felt weird.
Sure.
And I shouldn't go in the confessional booth with me, but I needed that moral support. And she's my partner in crime anyway. But I did research, and our church here, the St. Louis Cathedral, has a really beautiful like thing online of how you should go to confession. And it was a little terrifying because it was very complex of all the things that you need to do and blah, blah, blah. So I studied that and I was all ready, and we go in, and I was really nervous, because I didn't want to like mock them, I guess. Because
right. Yeah.
I believe in a higher being. I just don't believe in confession. But anyway, I didn't want to feel like them to feel like that. So I was trying to be very serious. And when I got there, the green light was on. And when I say I was nervous, I was really nervous. So I go to open the door and it's not opening. And I thought, oh, but maybe somebody else is in there, And we waited and waited. And then finally I go get somebody, and she goes, oh yeah, he's in there. And I go, I don't think so. So we went over, and she goes, oh, they have a meeting today. He's not going to be, around today. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to go through this again. Right? But I didn't actually go through it again because that was enough for me. Doing the research that I did from the cathedral, and then just being there and looking inside the confession booth so I would really know what it felt like and looked like, that was all I really needed. And I think it ended up being a really good scene. But just to sit down and write something, I don't think I could if I knew nothing about it. And they do say, write what you know, but I find it to be really true. You really should, you know?
Uh-huh. Sure. Well, and I think sometimes there's the bit of like, you write what's actually you write the book you need to write at that time, right? So it's like I feel like even though like I started Pirates a lot of years ago, I actually wasn't ready to finish it at that time in my life. Like so, I think even if I had tried to sit down and keep writing it, I wouldn't have. I think all those things kind of came up for a reason, and by the time I sat down with it, I was really like I think just. Skill wise as a writer, but then also just thoughts wise, right? There's lots going on, and I don't think I had all of those connections and things at the time. So I can see that completely. Like you didn't need to go to confession, but you needed to kind of have the feeling of you were going to confession, like to know how to be able to relate that to a reader to put that into words. So that's funny. I didn't even know that there was a green light or anything because I think my grandparents are Catholic, but I've never. My dad and mom we're like loosely Christian. Like there's lots of, and I think this is probably a fairly American upbringing kind of thing. Is like your family's Christian and maybe you go to church 4 times the whole like at least like for my generation, right? Like we did go. My dad took me a few times. I don't think I ever went with my mom, but maybe when I was younger, I just don't remember. But my dad got into it for a little bit when he had a boss at work that was like, you should go, and he was like, you're right, I should. And he coerced me to go with him by allowing me to get a dog. I wanted to get a dog, and he was like, you can get that dog. You go to church with me. Yeah. And so I got my dog Wrinkles, who was a great dog, so it was completely worth it. And we went for a handful of times until actually both of us got simultaneously annoyed without even speaking about it, is that all of the sermons turned into tithing. And so it was like 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row that it was just about like giving more money. And it was just like, I don't know. This doesn't feel like it feels like they just want more money. It's like a telemarketing kind of gig versus a religious experience at that point. So we both kind of bailed out. But that's
the exact
funny.
same experience with my family. They were Lutheran, my mom and my dad, and we went to church, I think twice, maybe like around Christmas time. And then I went to church 2 other times with friends, and it was so ridiculous. I mean, it was, one friend was going because when you're saved, they hug you, and she liked this guy in school, so she wanted to hug him. And I was like, so I'm like, okay, this is like so not for me, right? But then, and I went to church here with my husband once, and I hated it. It was awful. It was horrible, all about money. And they said, oh my God, if you need a miracle, just write that miracle in the memo section, and then you bring it up here. It's $30 for a miracle. And then if you want 2 miracles, you can't write a $60 check. It has to be 2 checks, and you write the other miracle what you want in the memo section. And I wanted to get up and walk out, but I didn't for respect. He was.
Shouldn't you get a discount for 2 of them? It's like, exactly. 1 for 30, right. 2 for 55.
But anyway, so then my friend was going to this church, which is the weirdest name ever, if I can remember it, like Sister Guadalupe something, but it's a Catholic church. And I went, my husband and I went with her. She says, you're not going to believe it. It's exactly what you want church to be. And I'll tell you what, it is exactly what you want church to be. You go in, everybody's so nice. The pastor is absolutely wonderful. He always has, that's what the whole preaching is about, is some kind of uplifting story that has happened recently. And it could be about, rescuing a kid or whatever it was, but it's always an uplifting story. And then in between, when he's talking, it's a full band, New Orleans band, and it's jazz and blues. And I mean, it's a magical experience. So, that's what, and it's never about money. I mean, yeah, they pass the little hat around, but he never talks about money. And it's just, I want to give them money because they're doing so many good things for the community. Right. That's what he talks about. Is, hey, this week we did this, and we have this going on, and Sally's having a bake sale, and whatever, right? So they're always trying to help the homeless, and anyway. So,
right. That's very cool. Yeah, hallelujah. Yeah. I always think that it's like, why do you need a giant church? Why not, Jesus preached on a mount. If you're a Christian church, why aren't we just like hanging out, go take a hike and hang out and, and then, preach the word from there.
Well, that's what they said. They found this, ancient document somewhere in some, ark or whatever. And it basically said, if you look for me here, you raise the rock, there I am. Basically saying you don't need a church to believe in, the higher power. And so
Right.
I agree 100%. You don't need a church. I think it's lovely to have a place for people to get together, but I think
Sure.
a lot of churches have gone away from that and used it as a way to make money, and
Right.
what really drives me crazy is the church here that my husband was going to. Everybody was so excited because the preacher had his own private jet, and I'm like, well, I guess your miracle is not in that, I mean, I just think that's crazy. I don't know.
That's insane. Yeah.
But I think it's, people coming together and even people thinking about a person at the same time. I think we're all connected. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but it happens to me all the time, right when I'm thinking about somebody that I haven't even, I have a crazy story. I was driving with my mother through Bakersfield, which is the horrible place. But anyway, they were moving, my brother and my mother were moving to Idaho. And she and I were following my husband and my brother in they had big 18-wheelers. My mother has a library and everything. So we were in the car behind them with our cat. And we're talking, because we don't get to see each other that often. Talking. And my mom's best friend a long time ago, her name was Joanne, and my mom loved her. And they found out that her husband was hitting her, things like that. And so to avoid any problems, they moved away. And my mother tried to contact her a few times afterwards because she was worried about her. And her daughter was my best friend at the time. And so we spent about a half hour talking about her, just talking about her, and, about all these different things and all the fun things we did when we were little, and when her daughter and I were friends. And I was gone for 10 days. When I came back to New Orleans, I was checking my messages, and there was a message from Joanne that said, I'm trying to find my friend Etta. I don't know if I have the right Marita, but if, can you let me know? And I looked at what time she called. She called a half hour after we were talking about her on the road trip. I mean, you cannot tell me that that's a coincidence. It's impossible.
Right.
We
Sure.
pulled her in, and that happens I can't even tell you the amount of times that happens to me. And I think it happens to, everybody at some points in their lives. So we look at it as coincidences. And my belief is, and I'm really getting into this more because it's real. My belief is that we're all born magical, and magical meaning many, many different things. But, immediately society tries to spank it out and tax it out of us and everything else. But, the magic of life and the world. And if you focus on it, I'm working on right now, I have a journal that I keep, and I've actually given almost all my close friends also a magical journal. And I only write down things that have happened that are magical. And that's one of them. One has to do with the dragonfly. My friend passed away and she loved dragonflies. It's a long, long story, so I won't get into why. But she had a dragonfly tattoo on her back, and it had to do with her granddaughter. But anyway, she very unexpectedly passed away, and it was devastating for me. And I wanted to do a second line for her, which is what we do here to celebrate life. Hang on. Right back with you.
Okay.
But I couldn't do it right away. So, because everybody was too emotional about it. So
Sure.
we waited about a month, and then I hired the band and everything, and the whole thing was so magical. But before the second line, I wanted dragonflies in it. So I went to Michael's and I got pipe cleaner and dowels and, some tooling and stuff. And my friend came over to my shop, and it was sitting in between us. And I started bawling. I'm like, what do goddamn dragonflies even look like? Do they have 4 wings or 2? And I have never. And I tell you, I had lived in the French Quarter at that point for over 10 years, probably about 15 years. I'd never seen a dragonfly in the French Quarter. Now they may be where pools are, but not where I was. Never saw a dragonfly in the French Quarter. Right when those words came out of my mouth, the biggest dragonfly I've ever seen in my life, blue and green, flew in and landed on the stuff we were making the dragonfly stuff out of, and just sat there and looked at me. And I'm like, this is the craziest story ever. And so my friend was trying to take her phone out to take a picture of it, but it flew away because she moved the stuff. And, but I'm just so glad she was there. So I would probably by now have talked myself into that I imagined it. But I know for a fact I did it. We saw this, huge dragonfly. That cannot be a coincidence. empathy. And I felt like it
Okay,
was her
fair.
granddaughter saying, hey, we got her, this is what dragonflies look like. Do what you were doing because you're on the right path. That's what it felt like.
Right.
So yeah, pretty magical. But there's so many. I
Yeah.
could go on and on and on about the magical things that have happened.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it is. I often think because it's funny that happened just a couple of days ago that one of the guests, and he's on the show all the time. He's a dear friend of mine now. I won't mention his name in case he doesn't want me to mention the fact. So he's fine, but he was in the hospital. And so he was in the hospital over the weekend, and he was like, I'll let you know when I'm out, and we can have a chat because it's busy here, all the hospital stuff. So I'm like, just let me know when you're back home, and we'll check in. And so I hadn't heard from him in a couple of days, and so it's like Monday or Tuesday this week, and I'm literally messaging him, and he's on the East Coast, and so it was like 7 our time. So I'm like, oh, it might be late for him, so I want to message him because I want to make sure while I'm thinking about it, I can message him. I don't want to wake him or make him feel like he needs to respond. So I literally messaged him like, "Hey, how are you doing? You back home? What's going on?" And the last time we had visited them where they're at, we had gone to this giant Christmas store that also had a bunch of Halloween stuff. And that's why I have Halloween decorations behind me already. I get really excited to decorate for Halloween. So once the kids start school, I'm like, I'm good. I can decorate for Halloween. And so we had gotten this one it's like a video store with an Elvira. And the video store is like an Elvira video store. And then there's a little standalone Elvira, figurine. And so I had put those out in this little Halloween kind of village kind of motif. And I put it out, and so I'm like, also, I put this out from when we were together, and so I messaged them, and then I sit my phone down and realize, oh, I had a message, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll check it real quick before I go back to what I'm doing, and then it was literally him answering my questions, and the message hadn't sent, but he literally went, I'm back home. I'm doing much better, So, do you have time for a chat? And that was one of the other things I said. Do you have time for, just let me know when you have time to chat. He said, oh, do you have a time for a chat, tomorrow or whatever? And it was just like, I was like, literally, I was messaging you. Like, and I didn't see your message because I was busy messaging as it went through. So it happens like, it's just way too much to say, it's not. I really think that we think of like times where people thought the earth was flat. We go, ha ha, those guys, they thought the earth was flat. We know so much more now, right? And I don't think the earth's flat, right? We do know that much more. But for the time, the earth being flat, for most of our lives, the earth being flat is perfectly fine to understand it, right? Like you're not even piloting the plane. Like most of our life is kind of on a flat earth. And I feel like that's kind of what materialism's hit is the kind of, it was very fine for a time. It led to a lot of advancements, but it still has never really solved everything. And a lot of the things that we think it solved, even like even you talk mental health and all these things, not that those aren't real things, they certainly are, but it hasn't solved all of them. So it's like it still feels like we're lacking something. And I think it's because we lost the magic at some point.
Yeah, I agree. And and I think that might be one of the reasons that all these magical shows that are coming up and why people gravitate towards all the magical things and supernatural things is because they wanted to come back out of them. I think we've suppressed it so much that it has to be. I mean, it makes sense.
Right. So, yeah.
I'm actually doing research right now for a different book, and it's the whole history of Egypt. And the very first few pages, it said, back in the time, magic was real, and it wasn't a positive or a negative. It just was. And and I haven't gotten much further, but I was like, wow, like I'm excited.
Right.
It's a history book, so yeah,
right.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's very cool. Yeah, it is, and it is very. It's actually kind of exciting. I always think of it like once you take off the shackles of needing to know everything and realize you can never know everything, like it's literally an impossibility, and just realize, oh, there's so much more. Like, it's even I forget who the quote's from, but they were like, physicists will tell you they can explain everything as long as you grant them one miracle. The miracle's the Big Bang, right? Like, oh, everything's just created from nothing. We'll take it from there, but give us that one, And it's like once you just realize like the universe is so big and wild and mysterious, then you just start going like, oh, we can't talk vampires. Like, oh, why can't we? Like maybe it's not always the movie villains and things, but who knows? The universe is a very strange, strange place. And when you accept that, it actually opens up so much more possibilities than closing it,
Yeah.
and
I
everything's
have
not
a friend
always
who's
terrifying.
also, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have a
No,
friend
go
who's
ahead.
David Lee Summers, and he writes vampire novels as well, but also other science fiction. And he's an astronomer. He works at a observatory as well. Anyway, he posts things on his Facebook sometimes, and I am blown away, and it freaks me out. Like he posted recently that oh, I was looking at another galaxy. I didn't know you could see other galaxies from where we are, and the black hole thing almost makes me like terrified.
Sure.
What? Like that's real. It's not
Yeah.
just on Star Trek. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's. I mean, I don't know if I even want to go there. No, I'd rather investigate the ocean here. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, not really. We just still know nothing about the oceans. Next to nothing about the oceans. Let's focus on that versus the black holes. But yeah, no, it's wild. And then they'll go. My dad's a physicist. He worked in until he retired. He worked as an aerospace engineer. And so I always like, and the one thing you could always get him to talk about, because he used to commute, we lived in, so actually you probably, or you drove close to us when you were going to Bakersfield. I grew up in like Palmdale, Lancaster area, Antelope Valley. So for people watching, the furthest reaches of northern LA County is high desert on the other side of the mountains, and not Palm Springs where the fancy people have their winter homes. Palmdale, no one winters there. Just you year long there if you're there. And I love it dearly because I grew up there, but it's kind of its place. But he did aerospace and everything, and so he commuted from there to like El Segundos down by like LAX and all these. And so he always had the crazy commutes and was really tired. So when I was growing up, he didn't talk a lot. He was busy just keeping a roof over our head, and food for us to eat. But the one thing you could always get him to talk about was physics and things, or like Star Trek or sci-tech and things. So I would ask him about those things. So I remember learning about warp drive like when I was a kid, and he was like, oh, what's and it's a really neat way. So anyone that wants to get the idea of warp drive in your head, it's super easy. Is take a piece of paper, draw point A, point B, and go, what's the quickest way there? And you draw the line and you think you're smart. Of course, it's the line. And then you just warp the paper. And you go, well, you're there now. The paper just warped. And now that whole line is a lot shorter. And I was like, oh, that's warp drive. So I would always do that. So we would talk about black holes and dark energy and dark matter and these things. And it's funny because then you go, but dark matter, like people don't even think is real. Like some people say it's absolutely real. Some people say it's not. And you just start going, oh wait, we don't know nearly as much as we think we do. It's
right.
there's so much avenues in there for exploration and such. So I want to be mindful of time because I know we've had a few a few hiccups
Tangents.
as we record here. So I want to get to the writing, but I want to get to actually Storyville because we had mentioned Josie Arlington. Well, I think her real name was what, Mary Dubler? Did I say it
Super.
right? Or
Yeah.
Dubler, yeah. So I wonder then, because I think you had touched upon it, but I wonder why was that book kind of necessary for you to write? Like what kind of led to it? And maybe you can give us the overview of who that is and why
So
she's
I found
important.
out so many things that I did not know when I was investigating Josie, and I found it all in magical ways. This is again like doors opening. I took a friend with me to the Columns Hotel, which was used as a brothel in the movie Pretty Baby that Brooke Shields was in, and it has that old brothely kind of feel to it. But they have a beautiful bar
Hmm.
inside, or you can sit on the veranda and watch the streetcars go by. Anyway, I was in the middle of writing about Storyville, so I kind of wanted to go there, and I asked her to come with me. Well, I was telling the bartender why we were there, and he said, "I'll be right back." And he comes back with the maitre d', and he says, "You right now are the only two people in this hotel besides us. There's nobody here." He goes, "Go have fun." And I'm like, "Really?" So we started going up to the second floor, and he goes, "There's a third floor." And so we go to the third floor. It was so much fun. And we find the Pretty Baby room. And it's really cool, everything. We were leaving, and I see the Belloc room. And at that time, I had no idea who Belloc was. And I love the name, though. What a great name, right, for a character. And so we go down and I asked him who he was. He goes, I don't know. So of course I researched it, and Belloc was a very famous Storyville photographer for prostitutes. And he was a creepy little guy, unusual little guy, but there's this mystery about him. Many of the slides of the photos have the women's faces scratched off. It's sometimes just the eyes, sometimes the whole face scratched off, but there are other slides with their faces still on them. So it's not like it was just one person. It was several slides, and nobody knows why. Nobody knows why. There's speculation that maybe his brother, he was religious, that he found him and got mad or whatever, or Belloc was mad, or I don't know. Anyway, in my novel, you find out why. And so I answered many questions from the past, about different things that happened, like why the Arlington burnt down the brothel. You find out why. And that was so fun for me. Down to the weather, I did the research. So it's so historically accurate, except for the unanswered questions. I just go ahead and answer those. So it was a lot of fun to write.
Right.
And it became important because she was important. Women at the time had nothing. They couldn't work unless you were like a nurse or a teacher. There was no opportunity. And women in prostitution, the madams particularly, they had, it was a business. And Josie had a really horrible brothel, her first brothel. It was fights every night. It was a nightmare. And she was pretty rough. But then her brother was murdered by her lover, and it changed her life overnight. She went to the Arlington in Arkansas, and she loved it so much. It was so glamorous. And she says, I'm going to be glamorous. So she came back and opened up the Arlington, and, it was gorgeous. And then all these other ones, and Lula White did hers too. But so Basin Street was, a lavish place with all these brothels. And it wasn't just about prostitution. People would go there for green hour, which was at the time happy hour, because there was no wine, so they were drinking absinthe. And men went there to do business, politicians and whatever else. And it was also kind of bringing the magic back, because there was fantasy involved. They had the Turkish parlor and, all that kind of stuff that nobody else had done. So she was a good businesswoman, and she invested a lot of her money, and she left a lot of her wealth. A lot of people benefited from her. She gave other people good lives. And she took her niece, Anna, under her wing, and they lived with her, her brother and her niece. And she sent her to Paris to go to school, because they found out who she was, and they wouldn't let her go to school here because of Josie. But still, she's paid for all of her beautiful schooling and took her on lavish shopping trips. And she decided to get out of the prostitution business because she didn't want her niece to know. Anyway, her niece ended up, it's a long story, but marrying Josie's longtime lover after Josie died. So there was something going on there. And then after a year and a day, so when I went to Tulane, I found when I found the Toy Story thing, I found the actual documents, all of it, the plans for the tomb, her signatures on things that she wanted and didn't want. And the really magical part for me was finding the court transcript, because I got to hear her voice, what she talked about, what she said, how she felt about things. And that was like really awesome for me. Anyway, after a year and a day, it's legal to take a body out of the tomb. You can push them aside, like the ashes or whatever. And, and move them into the middle of the tomb and put another person in. So after a year and a day, her niece and Brady, her longtime lover and Anna's husband now, sold the tomb for money and put Josie in an unmarked grave. Now, damn well she wanted to be in that tomb for eternity, or she wouldn't. She spent a fortune on it, and so much time and consideration of exactly how she wanted it to be. And there's this whole mystery around it, how it's rose granite, and it was by the train track light, and then later on street lights, and it would light up, and there were accidents because it looked like it was on fire, right? So they ended up moving it too. But so many crazy things happened. There's like this ghost story, and but I want to put her back in her tomb. So I couldn't find the family because everybody that was in it was already in it. But I did a news piece, and it re-aired during the pandemic. And the family watched it, the Morales family, and the woman said, "Oh my God, Mom, this lady's looking for us," right? So we started talking. It still hasn't happened. The cemetery is blocking us a lot, and some family members aren't crazy about the idea. But I think even if we don't put her actual body back in, I would love to put a little plaque that says the spirit of Josie Arlington, because the left side has nothing, no plaques or anything. And at least give her that so people would go there to see her, because that's what she wanted, you know?
Sure.
And so that's why the book became important.
Right, right. Very good. Did you say, I think you had mentioned you were there during Katrina, because there was the one bar that was open. So if you're okay then, so maybe I can ask then about Katrina then, because I know you had said you're at the one bar that stayed open. And so maybe you could tell us about that experience, just, generally, like Katrina, the bar staying open, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So Johnny White's was a really magical place. And the only reason we didn't have locks on the doors is because the gentleman who opened it, JD, he never put locks on. And when it was time to close the first night, they had a great night. He goes, okay, time to close. It's like, oh shit, I forgot about that. He goes, you know what? I think we'll be a 24-hour bar. And he just never, ever put locks on. We could not lock the bar. And so Katrina, so I left with my husband the day before because my husband's from here and he's never, ever run from a storm. But this storm he's like, we got to go. Sure. So we went to Texas thinking we'd be back the next Thursday. We ended up having to go to California, and we were gone a month, and about a month and a half, I think. But we had a landline at Johnny White's, and I was watching the news, and they kept putting us on the news that, it has to close at gunpoint, and I would just call the bar, and water's going down Bourbon Street. I mean, news sensationalism. I don't know. Sensitization. I don't know. You know what I mean? Out of control. And I think that we need to have tighter regulation on what's true. I don't want their opinion. I don't care what that reporter thinks, And it even makes me mad when I'm watching a station that's skewed the way that I would actually think. I don't want to know what they think. I already, I hate that. Things are bad enough. We needed to know the real news. And it really was devastating for everybody that was away to watch these ridiculous reports that there was looting going on when it wasn't looting. It was necessary. And police officers were opening the doors and telling people to get things. And it made me really mad when I watched the president at the time. It was Bush. And he said, there's zero tolerance. Well, he should have had an advisor tell him, no, this is survival. And he should have come on and said that. It's not zero tolerance. It's mothers getting diapers, Anyway.
Right.
It's emotional. But
sure.
Anyway,
okay.
So they were open. And during the actual storm, I'm sorry, they had trash bags. And they were holding the door closed when it was the worst part coming through. And I asked Marcy, who was there, I said, what's your biggest memory, when I was writing the book? And she said, paint. Paint was everywhere. There was pink and blue and white and green and purple all in the streets because everybody has paint cans in their backyards or their courtyards, right? And so they said it was so crazy. And then the really weird part about Katrina was the refrigerators. So we came back a month and a half later, and so it was around October. And we had to clean out our refrigerator. We really thought we would be back on Thursday. And I mean, it was the grossest thing I've ever had. Never let that happen to you. Now, when I hear a storm's coming, we had Ida recently, and we had the Vampire Cafe. I took everything out of this refrigerator. So I'm like, here, fire department.
Throw it all in coolers and just take it with us. Yeah.
Maggots are not my friend. Anyway, the smell, I can still smell it now. If I think about it, it's such a horrific smell. And so the whole city smelled like it because people put their refrigerators out on the street. And the entire French Quarter had this horrible smell, and they didn't take them away. I mean, they left them here forever. People decorated them for Christmas. It was like a thing. When Christmas cards had refrigerators on them. It was really weird. But that was a big memory of it as well. But the sad part that came from Katrina, besides all the lost lives and everything, is the city was better before Katrina in many ways. Some things got better afterwards, but the crime was way better before Katrina. Nobody was ever afraid in the French Quarter before Katrina. Now I'm nervous to walk around. When it's pretty desolate. I always had a German Shepherd with me, and my husband's 6'6", and he's black, and I was never afraid even after Katrina walking around. But one night my dog got sick, and it was late at night. And a grocery store is just on the corner from us. And I didn't even think that they're not open any. They were 24 hours. They closed for 1 hour, usually at night. All the 24-hour places went away. And so I'm going down there 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning to get him Benadryl or whatever. And I didn't want to wake my husband up. I'll just run down there. It's 1 block, right? I was terrified. I was followed by 2 people, and that it shouldn't be like that. And
Right.
it's anyway. I can go on. I'm going on way wrong tangent. Anyway, so there's things
okay.
that are worse after Katrina, but the good things are the trash company. I remember walking to work every morning, and I was ankle high in trash. And I'm not kidding when I say ankle high in trash. Ankle high all the way, everything, Bourbon Street and mostly Bourbon Street was just full of trash. Well, now by the time you get up in the morning, it is sparkly clean. It smells good. They use this lemony scent, I mean, I can't get over it. I still think about it. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, this is really impressive.
Sure.
But yeah, it was, so I was recently interviewed for CNN, and the reporter asked, so what do you all do for the celebration, for the big anniversary? I'm like, are you kidding me right now? We are not celebrating. We've forgotten about Katrina because we've had Hugo, we're thinking about the next storm and what we can do better. It is so not even commemorative memories or anything. It's disgusting that it happens. And, it's the one bad thing living in the South is hurricanes. They're really dangerous. Yeah.
Right, sure. Well, I was thinking about that with Chicago had the fire, right? And they call it the second city because of the Chicago fire back in, I want to say the 40s. I might be wrong, but when they had the huge fire and the whole city basically burnt down and they had to rebuild it. And I was like, Katrina was kind of that for New Orleans, was that it's almost a second city now coming through with how bad that went through. So, and I know it's
so my husband came back to help rebuild, and he was working construction with his brothers. And I mean, there were boats and houses in the middle of the street, just like in a random neighborhood. There'd be a house, like crazy.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I believe it. Yeah, I was just back. My wife and I over the summer we went. So when I visited the friend I mentioned earlier, we were in Michigan, and then my oldest daughter and my grandson and the grandson's father Wesley are in Indiana. So we went from Michigan down to Indiana, visited grandson, spent a bunch of time with Juju, and then we drove through Ohio basically to Western Pennsylvania and the Panhandle of West Virginia, the Northern Panhandle of West Virginia, where a lot of my other family is. So we visited my grandparents and stuff, and in Triadelphia, which is by Wheeling, West Virginia, is the bigger city there, which is only 45 minutes from Pittsburgh, but they had a huge flood where the Wheeling Creek came through and. Some family members of ours were in that it's a tiny little area. West Alexander is the bigger city there, and that's tiny. And they had flooded. And they were showing me the pictures of cars, and it's they lost 8 people. And luckily my family was okay, but they were showing us how the car had clipped their garage. It had a detached garage, crumbled the garage, and then went up on the embankment. And we were like, they're like, we have no idea whose cars it is. They haven't come to check it out, And I'm sure it's the same, like boats, whatever. There's a flood. It just takes them. So I know those kind of wounds never completely heal. So I'm sorry for your loss, just generally, right? I mean, I know
it's very, But the worst part was. Actually, it was interesting. I had a reporter come into Johnny White's on the first anniversary of Katrina, and it was hilarious because it was very much a locals bar, and we were all sitting around talking about it, right? We're all talking about Katrina, and it was the tourists that made it so thoughtless. They're like, oh, how high was the water, and there was no water, but you get tired of explaining it to everybody, over and over.
Sure.
Anyway, we're sitting there literally talking about it, and this guy walks in, sits down, doesn't order a drink or anything. And he says, so I'm a reporter doing a thing on Katrina. Can you guys tell me anything about it? And I'm like, no, sorry, we don't know. But if he would just come in and ordered a drink, he would have had so many stories. But what kind of a reporter are you? Not investigating for sure. Like,
for sure.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole concept of the show. We just have a drink and people tell me things, It's I'm not even a reporter, and I figured that much out.
Yeah. I felt like that frog on the cartoon where he sings opera, and somebody walks by and he stops. Like that's what it felt like. We just all shut up. And when he left, we started talking again. That was really the hardest part is, and like my family, the insensitivity about, my dad's like, well, he hated I was here in New Orleans anyway. But he would be like, oh, I guess you're going to have to move back to California, you know? And I'm like, no, because we were in California and then Rita was coming. And I mean, I was devastated, you know? And it was like, oh, you got to move back to California. I'm like, no, we're going to go rebuild, you know? And yeah, people don't realize how much the city like means to people that live here. It's very much ingrained, and it's a cool place.
Yeah, I believe it. And I think it's one of the, you know, it's so funny. It's so easy. And I think you see it a lot nowadays where people kind of are like almost anti-human, like, you know, humans are like anti-human, like kind of like put the species down. And it's like, on one hand, I can get where people are coming from, because we do lots of awful things, and we can be careless. And then on the flip side, we do like this indomitable spirit where it's like, yeah, you could never go back there again. And everyone could just decide like, you know, this area is not, you know, it's too risky and we'll go. Although every area, right, in California, there could be, I always say it's actually the wildfires that are actually more terrifying than the earthquakes. But sure, there's going to be a big one day, right? It's going to happen. We know that.
And tornadoes,
but, you know,
tornadoes scare me to death, because there's like, we had one behind us recently, and that's really scary. At least hurricanes you can plan for. Earthquakes you can't, you know, and fires really, so we're kind of lucky in that respect. But you're right, it's just, you know, no, I agree. I was going to say one more thing about the Josie book. Now I was going to tell you, and then I forgot about it, and I just remembered, and now I forgot again. Josie, insensitivity. I don't know. Damn it. It's a good thought. You have to cut that out. Sorry.
If it comes to you, just let me know. We'll add it back. But so I did want to ask though, because there was a few of the vampire legends, or they get lumped in with the vampire legends, and very specifically though, because you have the picture behind you that you mentioned of the Casket Girls. So I would like to kind of, you know, get over there a little bit, you know, spend a little time with that. So maybe you could tell us about, you know, for anyone watching that doesn't know that term, the Casket Girls, and maybe you can give us the background and why that picture is important.
Yes. So when I first moved here, I took a vampire tour, and there are 3 legends: the Casket Girls, Saint Germain, and the Carter brothers. The Casket Girls is the oldest legend from the 1700s, and the one with the most meat to it. So behind me is a picture of these girls they were brought here from France. And it's not the first time that this happened. The king did it before to Canada. And it's to help populate the city with women that'll keep men interested to marry and colonize there. Because they were woodsmen, Canadian woodsmen, flighty. They wanted to go on to the next project. And they're like, no, we need to colonize New Orleans. So there was this horrible person named John Law who was paid per head. And he first sent over criminals, prostitutes, sick people. He lied to a bunch of Germans that came over here to, you know, farm land, and there was no land to farm because it was all swamp, and really, like, it was terrible. So he was a horrible person. But anyway, the Casket Girls were kind of the last attempt, and they came from a horrible place called Le Sepulchre, which was a mental hospital, a prison, and an orphanage all in one. And so they thought they were getting handed a golden ticket by, you know, having to come over here, and what they went through even to come over here. I mean, it's all in my book, and it's really interesting. But so they got here, and they traveled with caskets, which are in French trousseaux, so boxes. And in almost every language, you know, here's the only place that a casket is an actual casket that you're buried in. So the city misunderstood it, and I think that's where the legend actually spouted from, like in real life. So I don't ruin the legend in my book, but the Casket Girls are supposed to be held captive in the Ursuline convent attic, because the Ursuline nuns were apparently, and it wasn't the Ursulines, but that's what the story is. They were in charge of them, and they've always been in charge of teaching young women. So because Sister Gertrude was a real woman, and she was in charge of them in real life, and she played some kind of diabolical trick on them. What it is, we'll never know, because I tried to find it everywhere, but I know it was a horrible, horrible trick. And she was sent immediately back to France. Well, because the Ursulines felt responsible, they believed that she left the door unlocked and they were turned to vampires. So the Ursulines felt responsible for them and continued to nurture them, but they had them held captive in the Ursuline convent attic. And that's the picture behind me, is the girls holding on to the nun, but they're done. They're getting out of the attic, and so she's going to die. And I can show you another picture. I'm going to turn this around. This is them. They get out of the attic. Tell me if you can see it. Do you see it? No.
Well, I see kind of a shadow. If you send it to me, if you send me the file, I can actually I'll splice it in. Yeah, I can just put it there so people can see it. You can kind of see it, but they're kind of just look like a shadow in the middle of the street. So I'm not sure if that's what you were going for.
So they the attic, and it's been said they've gotten out a few times. So in my new novel Mosquito, they get out and they got to get them back in. And so that's kind of fun. But there's so much more to the legend. I mean, you really have to, but they were actually called the Casket Girls. In fact, my big goal when I wrote the book is to find out the first time they were called the Casket Girls, and I found it. And, so that was fun.
Sure.
It's a fun read because you learn a lot about the history of New Orleans. It's kind of like the colonization of New Orleans and how these three legends are woven through our past. And so I'm one of the few people in the world that's actually been in the attic, and it was the most magical day. And they wouldn't let me publish it in the book, the convent wouldn't, but I put it on my website. So if you go to my website and go to the research tab, the entire experience, I wrote it and with pictures and everything. So you can actually be in the attic, the actual attic. And it's really crazy because there's one room that it's all wooden floors. And I had the most amazing guide. There was nothing in the attic, which makes no sense whatsoever because real estate here is very valuable, and not to use that for any kind of storage. I expected to see monuments and, I don't know, sculptures or something. Nothing. And one room, you'll see in the picture on my research tab, has holes in the floor big enough for caskets, like 6 of them, built into the floor. And then the walls, it just had the scaffold, like the behind this, what's that called? Stucco is the brick slat or the wooden slats. And she left the light off, and the light from outside was shining through the slats onto those holes. So it was almost like they moved the caskets for me, but ordinarily would keep the vampires at bay while the nuns were not there. That's what that's what I felt. It was amazing. There's another room. Sure. It's all wood floors, but there's one room that's brick floors, and there's chains in the back, and there's a door that they could just open a little piece and slide stuff through. And she goes, that's so the nuns wouldn't get hurt. I'm like, hurt? And she goes, why do you think it's brick floors? And she says, to wash all the blood and bodily fluids away. I'm like, oh my God, from like what? From vampires? And so they kept the criminally insane up there. Can you imagine being criminally insane and you are just insane? And now you're chained to this brick, no windows, really horrible. But, we used to treat people. But anyway, it was chilling. It was a very awesome afternoon. One of my favorite days of my life. It was really cool. So I built this whole room up here to look like that. And I wish I could show it to you better. We have Vampire Bill's coffin from the show True Blood up here. We have Sister Gertrude up here, but she's in cat form because in my rendition of the story, she was sent back to France, but sent back because there's always a black cat at the convent. And I think that's Gertrude's punishment. She has to be there making sure they never get out.
Sure. No, very cool. Yeah. No, if you have some pictures, send them to me, and I'll splice them in so people that are watching on YouTube they can take a look, and if they're watching on podcast, they can always click over and check them out. So that'll be really fun. Thank you for that. Have you ever witnessed anything yourself that was inexplicable or?
Yes, I have. So in the back of my book is my vampire story, and I don't believe in vampires. I still don't, but if vampires exist, I met one. It was the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. And I actually really thought about it the other day because, you write things off. If something magical happens, it's so easy to say, oh, well, whatever. And I did that for a long time, but I did put it in my book. And the other day I really sat down and I'm like, that really happened to me. And that is so freaking crazy. So my very first shop was a stupid shop, but I was desperate. I couldn't find any real estate in the French Quarter. So I got this shop that had a long carriageway, and then there was a mirror, and then you had to go to the right to enter the shop. And I worked until late because my husband used to work till 4 a.m. So I would even keep the shop open till 1 o'clock sometimes. And I was there late. but my dog always worked with me, and she was a very, very kind black German Shepherd, and she was about 13 at the time. And so when we make our own candles at the shop, and they're really magical. They have charms inside. It's very complex though. So I was in the middle of pouring wax, but every time somebody would come into the shop, she would sit up and I could see her from my vantage point. So she didn't just sit up, she stood up and she started growling. And she never did that, right? And then I hear a man or somebody walk in with a cane. You know how that sounds, walking with a cane. And I said, hey, I'll be right there. You know, I'm pouring wax. And so I was hurrying and she was growling still. So I come around and there's this man that, you know, I tried to make him everything but Romanian, but he was Romanian. I was like Greek, explaining. No, he had a Romanian accent. He was Romanian, but he was perfect. He had like tailored clothes on, not Gothic clothes. Black though, black pants, black tailored shirt, like it fit him perfectly. Very attractive, salt and pepper hair, but he was probably like in his 40s. And he had his very elaborate cane. That was the only thing that was off. And what made me nervous, because I don't really get nervous, but I was sitting there and he was talking, or no, he wasn't talking. He was walking around and I was talking like I usually do. I welcome people into the store. You know, we make everything here ourselves. All of our books are signed by the authors, blah, blah, blah. And I have my hand on my dog's head. And I could hear her and see feel the vibration. So I think that's why I was so nervous, right? And so he's ignoring me completely. I mean, completely ignoring me. And all of a sudden, he turns around and he says, in a real Romanian accent, "Do you have the history of the vampire?" And I said, "No, because all my books are signed by the authors. So now I wrote the book and we do have it." You know what I mean? But anyway. And so then he says, "I know people who would be very interested in this." And it was like my shop was a compliment to him. That is exactly how it felt. It was like, thank you. Like, you know, looking at it and like fascinated. Right. Then he ignored me again. When I said goodbye, he didn't say goodbye. And my dog was still growling. Well, on this side are all windows. And he had to walk out here. As soon as he walked out, I sat down and I said to my dog, that was weird. And I see my husband, like with my peripheral vision, because he's so tall, like, and like he walks fast. I see him. I'm like, oh, good. He's going to see this guy, right? And so he comes in and I go, man, that was just so weird. Elka wouldn't stop growling. That guy who just left. He goes, what guy? I go, the guy who just walked out of here. He goes, nobody just walked out of here. I'm like, Steve, the guy with the cane. He goes, Marita, nobody walked out. So I run out and we're in the middle of the block and there is nobody around anywhere. And it's impossible. I mean, it was absolutely impossible. And so that really happened to me. And then whenever I was in my shop working late at night by myself, I'd hear the door and like the hair on my neck would stand up. I'm like,
sure, yeah.
And I still feel like I'm going to see that man again. But if he's going to turn me into a vampire, he better hurry because I don't want to be wearing vampire dentures. You know what I mean? Like, it's time. Like,
Right. Do it while you still have the real teeth. I get it completely.
By the way, I happen to be born with natural fangs, which is really weird. I mean, the coincidences are uncanny. Yeah.
Right. Sure. Well, that's amazing. What's funny about it too is
the apothecary. So I didn't know that. Okay, it was Reverend Zombie's voodoo shop. And I was here by myself a lot when I was renovating, like at night, during the day, never felt anything, right? But not until I made the attic. It was a dining room. At first I built it, still is a Casket Girl attic, but it was a dining room. And it wasn't working out. So I decided to make it a lounge. And we use it now at night, like cocktails and whatever. When I did that, all kinds of people started seeing this woman with a bun. Customers, my employees, all unrelated to each other. They see her walk from our seance lounge to behind the bar up here, and then she disappears. So I haven't seen her. And then another thing that happens is I had a bar back come up here, and he comes right back down, and I had sent him up to do something. And he said, I'm going to go back up. And I said, okay. He goes, no, I'm going back. I said, okay. And I said, what's wrong? He goes, I saw something. It's kind of freaking me out. So then he told me it was like a shadow on the ground. And I've had many people tell me that in this like room where we have Sister Gertrude in cat form and the coffin, that they see this rolling thing on the ground, like a dark shadow. Well, then we had another bar, totally different bar back in the seance lounge, we sell blood bags, like drinks that are served in blood bags. And he fills them up here. And he comes down mad as hell. And there were 5 of us at work that day, and we were just opening, and he had been here before. So he comes down mad, and he's like, okay, I know not everybody here likes me, but this is ridiculous, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, well, we like you, but what are you talking about? He goes, no, I don't think everybody does, but this didn't happen by itself. I'm like, what are you talking about? So it's a milk crate, and you know how thick they are, right? They're heavy milk crates. You can't just tip it over. Like, it's not going to go roll over in the wind. It was knocked over, and it was full of blood bags, and they were all spewed about the ground. And none of us had been up here. Nobody. And he heard it happen, but he didn't hear any footprints or anything. He just heard that happen. He knew somebody had to do that to mess with him, and nobody did. So there's been a lot of activity.
You paused, right? So it was the milk crates that they all spilled over? Like, it was just that little moment where the ghost of the milk crate didn't want us to know the whole milk crate spilled over?
The tiny milk crate, the whole thing went over, and all the blood bags were spewed about. And it's impossible, Right. We have a chef's table seance experience. So it's a 5-course meal, and then afterwards you can have a real seance for an hour and a half, or a magical themed apothecary magic show. So I wanted to do the seance, and I'd never done one before. And it was fascinating because she's really good at the historical part about seances, but also about the historical part about our building. And she gave us all paper and pencil and told us some people are going to smell something, some people are going to hear something, some people might feel something or see something. So write it down and we'll talk about it afterwards. So my friend was here, and she's very, very skeptical and never said a word to me. 2 days later, we found out during the seance that this particular building by the voodoo shop, which they had it for years, I don't even know how many years, but a long time, they built it as a train station for spirits. So say, you die and you don't know if you really want to go on or not. This is a safe house where you can hang until you just make that decision. And so I think that's why there's so much activity now. Like they like, well, are we cool here still? She was talking about the house across the street during the seance, and there was a man who married a very young girl. She was 13, and he asphyxiated her. And right when she was talking about that, apparently my friend is the only one who heard breathing, and nobody else heard it. Like and she thought I piped it in. I love April Fools, and I do all kinds of fun things, but I did not do that. And so that was kind of, but nothing's scary. At least not for me. Nothing's scary.
Yeah. Right. Sure. No, thank you for all that. I've always wanted to go to New Orleans, and all our travels we haven't made it yet, but it's been on it is tough, top on my list. I'm always like, we have to go. So this makes me even
really
more like
I have to. You around. It'll be fun.
Very good. So, so actually, I want to transition. Then I like to call it shots. It's just rapid fire questions. You don't have to actually do shots of the drinks, but I like to transition to do that. So, and the first part I like to do is it's a little bit of trivia. So I thought I would do it kind of all things New Orleans or New Orleans related. Usually I do it like one step off, but then as I was researching the show, I was like, oh no, I'm super excited about this. So there'll be questions you'll probably actually do fairly well, because a lot of these are, New Orleans related. Usually I'm like, if you know aviation, I ask you questions about like, geology or something, like I inverted, but these ones should be up your alley here. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. So why are cemeteries or cities of the dead above ground in New Orleans?
Because we were a sinking city, and actually a couple times when the floods came or water came, big heavy rains, the bodies came out of the tombs, and like tombs were floating, but also bodies were floating because some of them are not sealed so tight. And also when there's now to this day, when there's big storms and there's a lot of water comes up, you can hear the people knocking on the bottom, in the tomb. So that's what they call the knocking is, yeah. But that's why we can't have underground tombs here. It's impossible.
Right. Sure. Okay. Very good. Yeah. And you nailed that one, of course. So what business did, I'm going to probably butcher the name, Marie Laveau, the famous voodoo queen of New Orleans, operate as her day job?
She was a hairdresser. And she would also give people advice and psychic advice and all kinds of stuff. And she would, that's where she got most of her clients, first through hairdressing, and then they would come to her for a spell.
Very good. Yep. I knew you were going to be good at these, but I was really excited when I heard them. So I'm like, oh, these will be interesting for people to hear. So, what architectural feature is common in traditional New Orleans homes that was designed specifically to ward off evil spirits?
Specifically to ward off evil spirits. Well, I got a better one. It's especially, I'm thinking of the Romeo catchers, but that was to keep men from climbing up balconies. The Spanish lace
You can tell us
balcony.
about that one too. It's fine because there might be
It's
more than
amazing.
one, you know.
On all these poles, they have these like spike things. I actually had some made, and I have them as candle holders, but they're called Romeo catchers. They climb up
Okay.
to, meet their girlfriends, and fathers put them up there. And one boy got, like, really, he was murdered, and like,
My
what's it
goodness.
called? Everything was like hanging out of, and he left it up there for a while to tell other boys, do not come to see my daughter. Yeah, it's a big legend here. Yeah. Wait, I'm just
Oh
trying
my
to think
goodness.
of I should know that. Um, I mean, one of our
It's
major
something to do with paint.
paint. Huh. It's kind of ringing a bell, which is really weird. Tell me. I want to know now, and
They
I'll
would
tell you.
paint blue porch ceilings. So they said
Oh,
if you painted
actually,
the
it's not evil spirits though. Maybe they added that. But the reason we paint, or I painted mine blue too, is to keep the birds from coming underneath and
uh-huh,
nesting there. That's the real reason. But I think
sure.
we added the evil spirit thing.
Maybe
That
over
might work
time, yeah.
too. I don't know. That might work
Yeah.
too.
Well,
It's
and they
definitely
said that yeah, and they said over time too, the I had it noted here, oh, the lye in traditional milk paints also repelled insects. So if you use the blue, you could repel the insects. I didn't even know the birds, but you could repel the birds. And yeah, maybe they added the evil spirits
evil
over time
spirits.
because yeah, to
I'm
make it
looking
more
that
New
up.
Orleans, you know.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to make a gris gris bag, is that how you say it?
Gree.
Gris
Gree
gris
gree.
bag. And for people watching, small cloth bags containing various ingredients believed to hold magical properties. So if I wanted one to attract good luck and prosperity, what two common ingredients, household items would I add?
Mirth. Um, I don't know if people have that. Common household items. Hmm. What's a good one? Um, for you said for good fortune and wealth, right?
Yeah.
Um, huh. I don't know. I gotta bone up on my voodoo.
Well, one of them was so wealth. One of them, if you think wealth, that one should be fairly simple.
I mean, money.
Yeah, you put a coin was one. The other
Oh,
one, I
okay.
don't know. I don't even know how I would give you a hint for the other one. The other one's a bay leaf. So was
Oh, good.
what they've
Yeah.
given me here,
They
but
need a lot of them. Like there, and so we put like we make voodoo dolls, and that's what I was trying to think, like what we put in the green one. But we put mirth and I don't think we put a bay leaf, but uh, lavender as well. And what else do we put in there? Rosemary. And then, we use real Spanish moss and little sticks and then
oh
wrap it
sure.
with, yeah. But
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, yours is probably more correct. Mine's internet based. I just was trying to find something fun for us to fun to quiz you on. Yeah. So, and if so, getting back to the warding off evil spirits, what is the earliest known zombie legend?
The earliest known zombie legend in New Orleans or in general.
Wherever you want to take it, could be New
So
Orleans or it
zombies
could be
came
general.
from Africa, and they it was a potion that they made, and people would walk around, and it's you really can make a zombie. So it's a potion that you create, and you give uh, this potion. I think some of it has to do with the pufferfish too, um, and it's a scary thing. I mean, it's kind of like a lobotomy almost, right? But so I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know if
sure.
is that like what you're looking for, or
No, that's fine. So I was trying to look it up because it's always hard to narrow them down. Like I had on JD Barker So he wrote with Stoker's son. They wrote a
No, it's his
prequel or a
nephew.
sequel.
He's a good friend. Dacre Stoker's a good friend of mine. He actually wrote the foreword to my book. Um,
Oh, okay.
he's his great grandnephew. Dacre
Oh,
Stoker's.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Stoker is
So
his,
him and JD they wrote Drackle, which was I forget if it was a sequel or a prequel or what,
it's a
but
prequel.
I'd ask him what was the earliest vampire legend. And then it's interesting though because when you actually look it up, it's hard to say what was the and zombies is also kind of hard to say like as you can kind of go. So when I had looked it up, the earliest one that me and the internet was able to find was Mesopotamia. They had one of the Epic of
Oh, that makes sense.
Gilgamesh.
Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, ancient, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's more for fun. I keep saying I'm going to do a leaderboard of these questions, and it's all the fake points that I dole out. And some point I'll do them, but the biggest thing is the fun of it. So,
Oh, yeah.
um,
I love these questions. I feel like I'm on Cash Cab.
Awesome. And last one here for our trivia, because speaking of things that can turn you into a zombie, what famous New Orleans cocktail was invented by a pharmacist who claimed it contained medicinal ingredients to cure tropical ailments?
What cocktail?
It's a New Orleans cocktail.
Um, I mean, I know it's not absinthe because that wasn't created here. Um, but it is medicinal.
It sometimes contains absinthe. It's a cocktail though, and I
Sazerac?
think it might
The
be the
Zaz-
official cocktail of New Orleans.
the Sazerac.
The Sazerac. Yep, yep, you nailed it. So,
Okay.
apparently it was Antoine
Pershad?
Pouchard.
Pershad,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
Pouchard. There you go.
Bitters we
And
use now, Pershad bitters. And his home was right behind us here where we are.
oh, really? Oh, very cool. Yeah, I guess it was the 1830s. So he mixed it with cognac, later rye. And I love rye whiskeys. I like cognacs too, but rye whiskey gets me. But they did it, and apparently it was in the egg shaped kind of cup, egg
Yeah.
cup called cocktail, and they think that's where the word cocktail may have
Yeah.
originated from. So,
Very good.
very
That's
cool.
I knew that. Oh, yeah. Hold on. I've
Yeah.
got this dog. Okay. He's back. Okay. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
A lot about
No
cocktails.
worries. Yeah, we got the puppy back. Very good. So that's it for the trivia. So now just rapid fire questions here. So proper pronunciation, New Orleans, like I've been saying, or New Orleans.
New Orleans.
New Orleans,
It's
okay.
New Orleans. But you know what? Here's the thing: is after Katrina, for some reason, news media got together and they started calling it New Orleans, and it drives me
Uh-huh.
crazy. It's not New Orleans, and they all say it. So it's like, okay, we're gonna have official New Orleans, but all the locals are in New Orleans.
Right.
We don't say
Okay.
Nolans or
No, right around the other ones. I always wonder about that. We were in Europe visiting, and we were going. So my wife Sue, it's kind of funny because my wife is Chinese, but she was born in Hong Kong when it was still British territory, and it was right when they were giving it back. So she has a mom's side of the family so it's all Chinese people, but they got sponsored to go to London. And so they all the second generation, all the people her age, thick London accents and everything. So when we go back to the Europe for family weddings and stuff, people think they're going back for my family weddings, and no, we're going back for my wives all the time. And we were there, and we were going to go up because I'm the seventh William, so we're all William Henseys, and we have different middle names, and so my son's the eighth. And so I tried to get my wife to name him William Danger Hensey because I was like, he can say Danger is my middle name, and then he'll be really conservative. He'll be like an
I
accountant,
love that.
And she's like, we're not doing that. And I was like, well, what if we named him William Wallace? And she's like, oh, that sounds nice. I can do that. And like I giggled, and she's like, oh no, that's that blue-faced guy you like, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it is. And she's like, it's fine, you can do it. So when we were in Europe the first time, I'm like, we have to go up to Scotland. We have to go to Stirling, where the William Wallace Monument is, and then we'll explore Scotland. So we went up to what I used to call Edinburgh because my family's all from the Pittsburgh area, and all her family's just ragging on me. They're like, it's not Edinburgh, it's Edinburgh, it's Edinburgh. And I'm like, how's it? But then it made me realize, like, oh, why don't we just call places what the people there call it? So now I'm like, oh, I try to remember, like, no, that's Edinburgh when you go to Pittsburgh. And actually, Pittsburgh was founded by a Scottish guy, so they say apparently it was probably was originally pronounced Pittsburgh. But yeah,
Yeah,
so that's what made me think of New Orleans because you hear so many different pronunciations, and I'm like,
yeah, you do.
what do people in New Orleans actually call it? Um, very
Yeah.
good. So next one here, what's a guilty pleasure?
What is a guilty pleasure? I mean, like the term guilty. I mean, or my guilty
Oh
pleasure.
no, for you, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to describe what a guilty. Okay. Watching Witches of East End. I love it. It's just a good show. Yeah, I'm watching, like things like that, like kind of silly things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and
Uh-huh.
Bewitched and like all those kind of shows. So that's my guilty
Yeah.
pleasure.
Oh, sure, sure. I see it completely. There was my wife loved that show Bones. Have you
Which
ever
one?
saw it with Bones?
Uh,
What's her name? It's Emily Deschanel. And the guy that he was a vampire on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. David something or other. But he played Angel. And they made an Angel series and they did a crime solving. And it's this very like a little corny at times. But like it's also really nice. I'm like, man, we could use some more shows. Like everything doesn't have to be so edgy and stuff all the time. Give me
right.
like something that you can just like that's just comfort food, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So favorite fictional count, Count Dracula or Count from Sesame Street?
Dracula. Definitely
Okay,
Dracula.
very good. So you have the time machine. You can go back to any historical period and bring back one thing with you. Where do you go and what do you bring back?
I'd go back to Storyville time and bring back Belloc with me because I do want to know a lot of the things that happened that are unexplained and answers and I think he was a really interesting person. So even rather than Josie, well, I don't know. It'd be a toss up, I guess, who would I bring back, but one of those people. Yeah. And then I'd
Uh-huh.
be
Well, you could go
and
back and meet him and decide from there. Like, who do you like
yeah,
more that you want to bring back with you?
yeah. But it would be a person probably. I mean, that'd probably be a bad thing though. I'd probably, then they got to live with you because I'd be responsible for them. So maybe I just
Uh-huh.
bring back some cool artifact. Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
But no, I think so my husband and I would always talk about sitting on our balcony in the French Quarter. And if we could have that as our safe spot and go back to like the late 1800s and like every maybe decade have 2 weeks in every decade. And as long as we'd
Uh-huh.
be safe there, it would be fascinating to watch all the stuff that happened here.
Oh,
It's
sure.
really a crazy, crazy place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be amazing. That would be really amazing. So a gentleman caller comes to the door, tall, dark, and very pale. Do you invite him in for a bloody, like medium rare steak, or make him bloody with a stake to the heart?
So I had always thought that it would be cool to be a vampire. And then it's really funny because I watched Twilight and it was a bootleg version, so it wasn't even really great. And I had a nightmare that night that the guy in the ballet studio who attacks Bella was in my bedroom and he was going to turn me into a vampire. And I
Uh-huh.
was going to, and it was real. I mean, it was so
Sure.
real. And I woke up and I never would have done it. I mean, I fought tooth and nail to not become a vampire because, if you really think about it, you're living at night all the time and drinking blood. And like, I mean, I don't want to do that and kill people. And, so I
Yeah.
would stake him. I hate to say
Yeah.
it, but I would stake him.
The
Yeah.
stake
Right.
to the heart. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Where you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the puppy getting involved with that answer.
Really fun. Okay, you gotta calm down.
Um, yeah, it always reminds me there was an old Queen song that it was they wrote it after watching The Highlander, but they said it was "Who wants to live forever?" Or, who dares to love forever. Um, and I was talking to my dad again the other day, and for his birthday, and I was like, this whole like idea of being able to live forever, like that that only sounds good if you don't think we already do. Like if you
Right.
think there's a soul and there's already these things we move on to, then why would you want to just be stuck in this forever? Like there's other things, for you.
Right.
So I can see
Yeah,
that. Like, yeah, a vampire sounds cool, and then you're like, I guess I always wonder if a very small portion of why we find vampires, because I think it's probably a lot of things, right? But why we get fascinated with vampires is the control over death, because the once you're undead and you're living, you've now exerted some control over death, and of course it's terrifying in its way, certainly, but if you have that, if you believe that there's more to us, well, then why would you want to just stay in this body and keep
right.
figuring things out all the time when maybe there's more magical things for us to move on to. All right,
Yeah.
so next one here, question from the audience. Hi, longtime viewer, first time poster. Quick question. If someone gives you a doll with crazy eyes and a row of shark teeth, should you assume you're cursed or accept that there really is no accounting for taste? Thanks. Sleepless in Glendora.
I think I would say the second, that there's no accounting for taste, because some people have really crazy taste, and a creepy thing might actually have good vibes attached to
Yeah.
it. So it
Yeah.
depends on. I guess it would depend on the person that gave it to me. That would make a difference. If it was somebody that has that taste, I would think it was a lovely thing, and if
Yeah.
it was somebody that I have strange vibes from, I would definitely think it was cursed.
Very
Right
good.
answer.
So what if it was your wife that gave you this thing? No, if you can see, I could take it out if you can't see its
Lakers.
crazy face.
That's funny. No, that has good vibes. That's a happy Laker.
It's good vibes. And that's one of those. Okay, let me remember the name. It's not Honey Boo Boo, it's La Boo Boo. I always want to call them Honey Boo Boo. My wife tells me it's wrong, but La Boo Boo is apparently it's gotten very, very popular. I don't know. And she got me that one, and she thought I'd love it because she put it in a Kobe Bryant jersey. And I'm like, I don't know what this thing is, but you got it for me, so it'll stay on my desk forever, and it'll make appearances, during the show.
That's awesome.
And then I like to always ask the AI overlords. I punch in every guest name and ask them to ask you a question. So they're always incredibly wordy. So you can pick out any part of this you would like to answer, but there's usually something interesting, and then it goes on for four sentences. So, but I don't want to anger the AI overlord, so I'm gonna read it verbatim here. So beyond the literal occult elements like voodoo, there's a persuasive or pervasive sense of the unseen and the otherworldly throughout your writing in New Orleans Vampires. What do you believe is the fundamental human attraction to the occult, to the hidden forces and mysteries that exist beyond our rational comprehension? And as a storyteller, what responsibility do you feel when portraying such powerful and often misunderstood spiritual and supernatural systems? We're not done. How do you balance intrigue and entertainment with respect and authenticity? So feel free to answer whatever you like on there, but the AI overlords, when they take over, will know that I read their entire question.
So I am going to take a piece of that. When I wanted to move to New Orleans, my parents were very upset with me because I was head of marketing for little dog is eating my book. Okay, I'll do that one more time. When I originally moved to New Orleans, I was an executive, and my parents were really upset that I was moving to New Orleans because I was going to be bartending and opening up a blues club maybe, and I ended up opening the vampire shop, but they weren't really happy about it. And so I wanted to open a blues club, but I wanted to bartend first, because how can you run bartenders if you've never bartended? So
Sure.
I met a gentleman, and that's Johnny Weiss, and I started tending bar there. And I never thought I would be so ingrained in that place. But my mom, who's very, very smart, we were in her kitchen telling her this. She looks at me and says, Marita, what's the next institution? I'm like, okay, bartenders aren't, that is a very good profession, Mom. Anyway, so then I started writing about prostitution, so my poor mother. But, and I thought about that a lot, because in my novel, Carter Brothers, was coming out, prostitution plays a big part of it. And that's why I wrote the Josie Arlington book. And I am kind of glorifying prostitution. And I did think about that, what is my responsibility in that? And I really don't know how I feel about it, because I don't think that women should, be put in that position where they would have to do that. But I don't know. That's a tough call. But at least I think about it, and I think about how glorified to make it. So it's still the woman that is a prostitute in my story is, and then Josie's in it as well. They love their profession, and for many reasons. And so I do feel kind of weird about that. And so I tried not to make it, you'll see, I don't make it like wonderful, but I do think that's a responsibility. The other thing is that I don't, even though vampires are, supernatural and dangerous and whatever, I really try to look at the magical side of supernatural, things. I don't really get so much into occult, like, at least I haven't at this point, because I don't, even in my store, my vampire shop, I don't really like skulls and things. I prefer, like, I'm not even really a common person. I prefer, I don't know, like, what do I have? Things that vampires would use, leather journals and old fountain pens. And, it's a shop that if you were a vampire, you would go there to shop. Now we do have a lot of stuff now since I have more employees, they brought more things in. But that was my original thought, is like, this is to be a place where vampires would shop. So I'm not really into the occult, and I try to focus on the magical. Yeah.
Right. Sure. Oh, no, thank you for that. And so I like to say, the show called Writers Drinking Whiskey, I'm ethically mandated to talk some writing. And I think that leads us kind of perfectly into that. So, so I wanted to ask you two things here. One is that with writing, historical fiction, right? There's always that balance with the storytelling and then the historical fact and, period sensibilities, right? Like, it's really easy to put on our morality of the day back on something that was happening in the 1800s, and that would be so foreign there that it comes off very kind of foreign. But how do you balance that when you're trying to write about a period in time to readers of today, and in a way that makes them understand what was happening, and with telling the story with just the joy of this storytelling?
So it was easy with the Carter brothers because it's the movie. I'm also writing a script for it, but the book starts where there was a crash on Royal Street and a building collapsed. And I was in my shop when it happened, and it was really devastating. And then it became wonderful because the new owners of the property gave it to UNO, to their archaeological department, to do a dig for as long as they needed it. And like, my little lights going off because it's right next door to the Carter brothers, where apparently the Carter brothers lived. And they were serial killers who, when they were finally caught, said that they wanted to be murdered because they were vampires. They would kill again. And when they finally, put them in a tomb, they were put in St. Louis, number one, because they were Catholic. So even if you were a criminal, you would put there. And when they went a year and a day later to put their things aside, their bodies, their clothes, whatever, aside, so that they could put the next body in, there was nothing in there. No clothes, no nothing. So hanging would not kill a vampire, and that's how they were murdered, was hanging. So, I started with that and like finding the bones there. And then it goes back into the past, and there's a watcher who's a prostitute. And it came from Josie's time, that when the Carter brothers were eventually murdered, Josie's worker put a watcher in place to make sure that they'd never get out. So through the centuries, now this girl here, a modern day girl, is walking by the side every day to make sure, nothing is found and everything. If they do get found, she's responsible for ending them. And when I go back to Josie's time, it was really easy because I just put the Carter brothers, Wayne would have loved Josie, and Josie would have loved Wayne, because they were both adventurous, and he wanted her to have her beautiful brothel, but he thought she was missing out on a lot of money by not having cribs, which are little tiny, horrible square rooms just big enough for a bed, that cheaper, it was really cheap, and like the tailors could afford. So he's like, what about the laymen? They need this too, right? So he was running that for her. And so then I learned a lot about the cribs, and I learned about Belloc and how they all, and so that's the fun part for me, is weaving it together. And I mean, that's where that's definitely my jam, doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, does that answer your question? Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, what is your most unhinged writing advice? Just your most
So
unhinged, like your, the non-standard kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, I think writing, so I did teach a class once at a university or a library here, and a lot of them were talking about how they just, they can't find time to write, they whatever. So I gave them an exercise on how to keep yourself going. And even if I don't have time to write, I'll write down big thoughts like, okay, what's going to happen next? Just, he meets Josie, right? And then I had the next thing I had him do was write a paragraph about that, and then write like a whole page about it. And so if you, that gets you over the hump of like, I can't do this, I don't have time to write. But if you continue to just move forward, and like just write a little thing, a little note, and then think, okay, now I'm just going to write one more paragraph about that, and then I'm going to expand it into one page, and you'll find you really move forward fast that way. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess that would be it.
Yeah. Sure, sure, absolutely. I think there was I always forget he's a fairly famous English writer, but he wrote on legal pads on the trains, and like in London and stuff, the loo going back and forth, and wrote lots of books that way. But it's like you want to make it happen, you'll make it happen. Just find those times. So, very cool. So, thank you for that. And so, did you have something you could read for us today?
I won't read the whole chapter, but I will read. I mean, how much should I read? Just like Joel, with a few pages, right?
Yeah, so usually I say kind of like 2 to 5 like minutes. I mean,
Okay.
10 minutes is
Yeah.
probably the long end, but somewhere within there.
Yeah. I got that. Okay. This is from Mosquito. Whoop, Southern Vampires. And so Mosquito is based on the legend behind me, the Casket Girls. And Jake is the main character. And this, I have to say, this is very challenging. Wrote this, like I said, at the restaurants, and it wasn't like, I've never written first person present tense before. And the fun part about it was I would write myself, because it's a penny dreadful. And penny dreadfuls were, the little pamphlets in England that they put out so that people wouldn't be so depressed because they couldn't afford to read. Penny a piece. Mine were $2 and a penny a piece. So it came out that way first. And every chapter is a cliffhanger. So that was really fun because I mean, I knew basically where I was going, but I would write myself into a boss in a corner. And then I thought, what did I just do? Because how am I going to, this is my main, everything's through the main character's eyes. And at one point he gets beat up so bad, can't see, can't walk, barely talk. I'm like, what do you know? Fun. It was really so.
Right.
This is the first chapter as Jake arrives into the French River. It's called Just Passing Through. I never believed in monsters or spirits before I came to New Orleans, so why should I now? I'm traveling with Moby again, my German Shepherd, trying to break up the trip for her, make things more bearable than traveling 24/7. Looking for work, staying off the grid. I'm not running from the law. I'm running from a different kind of trouble. This morning I found a small dog park in the French Quarter, probably one of the nicest dog parks Moby and I have ever come across. But now I'm standing here under the oak trees listening to this old man spout bullshit about vampires. As if last night wasn't enough. I swear that girl on the roof of Royal Street was real, a bona fide female human being. The girl was buck naked on top of some old fancy building, and the police acted like I was crazy for calling it in. The woman cop sighed at me through the phone as though I should have known better and said, "That's just Julie, one of our favorite colorful spirits." Like I'm supposed to accept that as an explanation of why they weren't going to get up there and get her off the roof. She must have had second thoughts, though, because when I hung up with the cop, the girl had gone back inside. Then this morning, the minute I set foot in the dog park, this yahoo wanders over and starts trying to convince me that vampires have infested New Orleans. I run my hand through my somewhat unruly hair before I lob Mobby's ball. My mom had always hated it when I let it go that long, but a haircut's been the last thing on my mind lately. Moby tears after the ball. "You better not stay in your car tonight, son," he says, slinging his dog's frisbee around and around his finger. "Nights are longer now. You'll need shelter." He pauses and takes in my dog. "That's a nice looking dog. What's his name?" "Moby. I'm Jack," I say, and give him a fist bump just to be social. "Like the whale, Moby Dick?" he asks. "Yeah, only he's a she, no Dick, just Moby." This gets a chuckle out of the old man. He looks around like he has a secret. "I can tell you're passing through. Just your camper, right?" "Oh, that's your camper, right?" I nod yes. "How long do you plan on staying?" He zips up his coat. There's a wet cold in New Orleans that goes right through you, not like the brisk, clean cold of Idaho. I don't know, a few days, maybe longer if I find some work. What kind of work, he asks as he sits down on the lawn chair. Pretty much will do anything that pays, I say, and I join him, sitting in another one of the chairs the regulars must have brought to the park for their comfort. Look, my advice, if you want it, you got to watch out for the mosquitoes. Mosquitoes? Didn't think they'd be a problem in the winter, I say as Moby returns with her ball and grows slimy, wanting me to throw it again. He leans closer to me and whispers, not those kind of mosquitoes, the other bloodsuckers, southern vampires. He's nodding, looking for a reaction from me. He needs a shave, but basically he looks pretty all right, not like a drunk or crazy or nothing. Vampires? Like on Buffy or Dracula? No, like in hell. He's adamant now. He's taken on a whole different demeanor. You want to live? You'll get yourself a hotel room and stay there from dusk till dawn. Or better yet, you just keep passing through and don't stop nowhere near here after dark. I must have let out a laugh because now he came at me. Listen, you stupid son of a bitch. I'm trying to warn you. Save your life. I like you. You seem like a good kid. It ain't always been like this here. But right now there's a war going on. You don't need to get messed up in this. He stands up and whistles for LaRue, his schnauzer, who's chasing Moby for her ball. None of us have seen him in person, except those who got eaten, of course. But we've seen the aftermath. Ripped out throats. I ain't never seen so much terror on a dead face. What makes you think it's vampires? You ain't been listening to a word I said, son. Ripped out throats. And when the coroner got a hold of them, well, they ain't got no blood left in them. What else does that? Look, son, heed my warning. Get the hell out of Dodge or stay the hell in at night. With that, he hooked LaRue to his leash and walked out of the park. Mosquitoes, southern vampires. I can't help the smile from crossing my face. Is this entire town crazy? I call Moby and head to the camper. I parked it outside the dog park on Dauphine. Was thinking of leaving it there overnight. Vampires, come on. Is that good?
That's perfect. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming on. This is we kept, hopefully this is cut up well enough that no one notices all the trouble we had like going the course of it. But thank you so much for coming on. And, I mean, it was my end too with like the recording and things. So we were a little snake bit, but I think I think it's going to come out great, and I really appreciate you coming on. And this is. Yeah, been a real thrill for me. So I like to say it's last call. You don't have to go, but you'll have to restart the video or podcast if you're on podcast form. But what I like to ask people is, what do you think is next? Like, what's the next? What's the future of kind of storytelling here in general? Right? Like, there's all the AI. There's all these crazy new technologies going on. And what do you think?
I'm worried about AI. I'm very worried about AI. I love it in many ways. There's many good things about it, but my friend wanted to see, she's an author, Lisa Arden. She wrote a really beautiful YA series about the Casket Girls. But anyway, she took a class and wrote a book in 45 minutes. She said, basically you just put in like, okay, I want Gothic genre, 1800s, love triangle. These are the names I want. And then you put in a few more things and all of a sudden it just starts writing. And she said, you know what? And it wasn't bad. And that's so scary. I mean, that's just, what are we going to do? I mean, I don't know. A lot of the future scares me a lot. But I think the future of writing, I don't know. It's really weird because I did book signing last week at Barnes & Noble. And I was mesmerized by how many people were in the bookstore. And it's so uplifting. And, because I'm getting worried, is everything going to be digital? I buy a lot of digital books, which is not a problem. I mean, I like that. I like reading it in bed at night. But there's something about holding a book in your hands. And there's something about having a book come out, that is physical and going to a library. And it just makes me really happy that there were that many people. And I sold in 2 hours, I sold 22 books. And so that's, I felt pretty good about that.
Oh, yeah.
So people are still buying books, and maybe it's not a problem because it's scary to me, the AI thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, sure.
What do you think?
I think you made a really great point actually with that is I think more and more people are going to want, and I think authors really need to cling to this is do what AI can't. AI cannot go to the bookstore and actually be there for people to talk to do a reading. and make an actual human connection with. So I think the days of writers that just pumped out work that was varying degrees of quality, right? Like there's probably some writers that can write three good books a year, you know. That's probably few and far between, but probably you know there is some. But I think the content churn is never going to be able to keep up with AI. And I think it's probably okay. I think, you know, really if you're talking like the artistic value of it and the human value of it, I think there's a chance that it could actually be better. But I mean, that's just that
Yeah.
I'm hopeful because I think there's a lot of good stuff AI can do. Like I do it for like this show. Like I'll take this video, and after I edit it and things, and I have it on YouTube, I'll send you the link, and I'll go, "Hey, here's the link for your show. Let me know if there's anything you're worried about." And in between there, I put it through this AI program that gives me a bunch of the little shorts that I can share. Um, and I get to edit them, but it's just this video. It's not doesn't make content up. It's just me and you
Hmm.
talking, and then it helps me though get down to those shorter little things I can share. So it doesn't take me double the amount of time, which was when I tried to do it myself. It took double the editing and things. So I think there's cool things that can come. And I think medical. I think there's going to be a lot of really great things that'll come from the medical space, but the artistic space. I think there's going to be a weird adjustment where it's like no longer is it just pump stuff out. You know, it's going to be humans who pump out the good stuff. You know, the just make the next exact boilerplate kind of
Yeah.
novel.
But my
That part's
publisher,
probably going to go.
my publisher, I don't know about yours, but is very adamant about, no AI. And so
Sure.
that's good too, that I'm sure they have ways of figuring that out. But
Oh, sure.
um, yeah, and I think, so I'm so against moving too fast into the future, but we're there. What we're going to see now
Oh,
is going to be crazy. But I do have a Roomba, so I have a Roomba robot, and I love Alexa.
yeah. Sure.
Love
Yeah.
Alexa for many reasons. The music, you can
Uh-huh.
build your own soundtrack, and so
Uh,
I semi embracing parts of the future. Yeah.
right. Well, it's I think it's going to be a really weird time in figuring out the best ways to do it. You know, and I don't think outsourcing our humanity is not the best way to do it. Outsourcing, sweeping your floor, cool. You know, I have a DJ room by here too, as I like to call it, from Parks and Rec. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to have to sweep the floor every day. This thing will do it for me. That's awesome. Like sweep
Right.
the floor. Help me make those shorts, but I don't have it. I have it ask one question every episode, just for the fun of it, more, kind of the novelty and the joke around with it. But the real thing is go on and actually talk with someone, have a real conversation and get to know them. I don't think AIs can facsimilate that, but it's not actually going to do that. And I don't think that's actually a good use for any technology. Like we should be the people and have the technology help us. So
I
um,
agree. I
yeah,
agree. Yeah.
so very cool. So I will have your website linked up here. So anyone who wants to get it, I'll have that linked. Is there anywhere else you would advise them to go to if they want to learn more about you?
NOLAvampires.com. You can get to all my
Okay.
websites from there. Yeah, it'll show you my
Okay.
restaurants, my boutique, and my author page. So that's the easy way, NOLA Vampires. And I will send you those pictures.
Okay. Very cool. So I'll splice
Thanks so
them
much for
in.
having me. I loved it. And cheers. Like, it was really fun.
Yes. Yes, it was a great time. Cheers. Extra shots. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. It was a really lovely time. I love talking things, all things strange and wonderful, woolly. So, thanks so much for Marita for coming on and doing that. If you want more information on her, of course, you'll find it in the description. If you're on YouTube, you can find it in the pinned comment as well. And of course, if you want to find more about me, best way right now is to head over to Substack. You can find all of these episodes there. You'll find Pirates of Appalachia, my epic absurdist satire. We are on chapter 26, Live Long and Feed the Buzzards Well, where we check back in with the Zeodarm after their meeting with the Anunnaki, where they're trying to they brokered a truce to fight against the drone gods and candidate Michael Hawk and the Drone Strike Arcade that's coming. So you'll see what happens there and a bit of a twist with when they get back to the land of the when they get back to the Ashlands. So you can find that there. It'll be a lot of fun, a lot of interest, a lot of turns. We're hitting the fast lane. for pirates. So things are gonna start happening pretty quick and fast right now. A lot of pivotal moments for the characters, for the story. So check us out there. And of course, if you just want to stay here and watch or just listen to more Writers Drinking Whiskey, if you're on a podcast, I assume the podcast player is going to take you to the next episode. If not, you might have to click it. If you're on the YouTube box, there's going to be a box on the screen that tells you which episode you should watch next, and you should listen to it because the algorithms, they are always the wisest thing you can find. That's what I've learned. That's just completely outsource your humanity. Let the algorithms figure it out. Why? Why try? I'm being facetious, but yeah, whatever. Thanks everybody, and have a good day. Cheers.